gingerly took the package, opening the box. Inside was a strange sheathed sword, a black and golden sheath with a strange mechanism on it. Even the cloth was black and gold, with minor blue detailing. There were a few things also in there, like a new belt for the sheath. Kaminari slowly, carefully, lifted the sword. It was lighter than he thought it'd be, and the balance was different from his current sword even while sheathed. He carefully removed his current belt, switching it with the one inside the box first and then reattaching his new sword without drawing it. His eyes closed, and he took a moment to breathe in from his slouched posture, then disappeared. His dash brought him over 30 feet away, his sword now drawn. The black blade framed the silvery edge, and the golden lightning bolt that ran its length. This was the way the sword was supposed to be. It wasn't as awkward to move as the one he'd been using. Even Power Loader couldn't make swords as good as Ronin did know, as good as he did. He took a moment to enjoy it. The golden wire-wrapped grip, the black metal beneath it, the vaguely sheep-like ornaments in the handle. The cloud pattern on the handle, a black thunder cloud giving way to the golden streak sparking down the sword's length. Even thinking about how he made it brought a smile to his face, and now that he held it, a strange feeling of pride and joy mixed within his chest. Enjoying your handiwork, Kaminari? Ronin laughed slightly from his kneeling posture. It's quite beautiful, you know. Yeah, what's it called? Ronin chuckled again, ignoring the glare from Eraserhead who was usually so potent to be ignored but couldn't seem to anything against the relaxed mentor. How should I know? Did I make it? He pointed to himself with both hands, then shrugged. That's a question for the smith. His eyes and smile widened, bouncing with how giddy he was. Really? You mean it? Midoriya nodded, drawing his own sword. In most people's hands, this would be dangerous. But this was Denki Kaminari. Quote. This, my young student, is my first true katana, Yamato. Would you like to look at it? Kaminari nodded and held his sword, comparing the weight. Quote. Yours is pretty heavy. Midoriya nodded, laughing. Mine is made for a different purpose. It's also quite a bit bigger than yours, though. Kaminari had missed the most obvious difference between the two but still managed to get a bit of the point. Midoriya pushed off from his sitting posture and grabbed his sword easily, rushing past Kaminari before he could react. Now though, let's see what you can do with that good sword. After all, a great sword can cut anything in the hands of a fool. Ronin spun the sword before dramatically sheathing it. But a great swordsman can cut everything with anything. He walked away, then gestured to Kaminari. Come, enough of these soft grounds, it's time to get some bruises. I want to see how good you really are on some real ground. Kaminari nodded vigorously, then finally remembered to sheath his sword, chasing after his master and running toward the harder floor, eager to practice new aspects of the thunderclap and flash. Chapter and notes. Enjoying the music? I hope so. Yo, world's worst DJ here and I don't need to put a recap in. You read the thing yourselves. The unraveling of Ronin's real identity is coming along, with the major players slowly gathering. It's the day of the Hosu City attack, and we'll be seeing how Ronin deals with it soon. As for now, it's just past 12, and it's training time. Writing a character with a hidden identity can almost turn into a mystery novel, except it's not a mystery for the readers but the other characters in the work. You need to give them a steady trail and make sure that the reveal doesn't come from left field. People who are supposed to figure it out should be able to without any astounding leaps in logic. This chapter was definitely short, but I had a splitting headache for the first half and got hit by the drugs for my headache in the second half, so I just gave up and stopped. A good short chapter is better than a long bad one, and I'll at least try for the short instead of definitely getting the long one. Another fast fact, we're reaching the end of what humans can actually do IRL. What Kaminari pulled off was an incredible feat by modern standards, since while he still wasn't going as fast as humanly possible, he was reaching it with much less build-up. And Ronin is canonically better at physical things than Kaminari. Also, Kaminari's 8-meter dash finally rounded up 1. Yay, somebody's been practicing off fanfic. Another fast fact, someone once said that Todoroki's ice was weak because Stain could cut through it. However, we also see people get stuck in it multiple times, so it's more likely Stain was just incredibly strong, and also that he could get out of it because he wasn't completely covered in it, like breaking duct tape with your hands versus breaking duct tape taping your hands together. However, Stain still is way stronger and faster than a real human. Ignoring that he can keep up with Midoriya, whose speed is inconsistent as hell, he can outpace Iida, who has basically rocket feet sometimes, and can outmuscle said rockets. Those rockets carried himself and 3 other teens around a field in the sports festival, so they're not weak. This is just about the power level in BNHA. It seems humanity has at least generally gotten stronger, or more accurately, humanity has gotten weaker but as a trade-off, their upper limits have been raised. Everyone's weaker at the start but has the potential to be stronger at the end. Or Hiroshi is bad at math, dunno. I'm going to keep bringing this up, I'm sorry. Chapter 56. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya enjoyed this part of training the most. They just did some light stretching and were now practicing breathing and meditating. Kaminari was just sitting crisscrossed, but even that seemed a little difficult for him to do for any more than a minute. That meant at least sitting like this would help stretch his legs in a way they weren't used to, even if he shouldn't go too hard into it at first. Midoriya kept an eye open, gently talking him through it and helping him position himself correctly. A straight back will help you breathe better. This applies to the thunderclap and flash too. You want to take your breath in while your back is straight. This will help you get more air into your lungs. Kaminari nodded, his face scrunched with focus. He looked ridiculous, but Midoriya didn't want to laugh at all his effort. Relax, Kaminari. That's the point of meditation. If you don't do it right, it's not the end of the world. Kaminari nodded, going limp and slouching, before remembering what he was supposed to be doing and leaning backward. It wasn't much better, but it still was better. They could work on it. What are you, a yoga instructor? Eraserhead chirped in from the side. Haha, perhaps I am. Midoriya nodded, not taking too much offense. Eraserhead was one of the heroes he still liked, so no point in making him an enemy. Even if he did throw sand in his eyes. Twice. Whatever helps my student, I'll at least try. Eraserhead rolled his eyes and lay down in his sleeping bag, but not falling asleep yet. Midoriya checked the clock, then had Kaminari go for another minute before he wrapped it all up. Come Kaminari, we've got to finish stretches, then we'll get into today's lesson. Aizawa didn't get it. He was watching, he was seeing the results, but he still had no fucking clue how Ronin was doing it. Stretches. Breathing. What did that have to do with the insane speed Nezu showed him? Were they fucking with him? Was it Ronin's quirk? It didn't make sense according to everything he knew. Good work Kaminari. He was always saying that, but Kaminari looked anything but good. His face was red from how hard he was trying. How come he never tried this hard in class? You're really improving. You couldn't even get your legs this far when we first did it. Really? No, he's just flattering you. Thanks, sensei. Sensei. Kaminari didn't even call him sensei. What was going on? This didn't make any sense. Alright Kaminari, we're going to be going over quirk usage today. We'd do it on the beach, but this place is the only place you can legally do it. Kaminari listened to Ronin, nodding along as his teacher made his points. So far, it all made sense. Ronin was a security guard, not a pro hero, so he wouldn't have his own agency. If he ever needed to, he probably used UA's gym and stuff. Quote. But I can already use my quirk. What are we going to learn? Ronin had taught him to always question what he didn't understand. It was the first lesson he ever taught him. A new method for you to use your quirk. Ronin stretched on the hardwood floor one last time, then walked toward a table usually used to hold drinks or bags while working out. There was a slight rattle as he placed things on it, then turned to face Kaminari. I have a few theories about your quirk, and I want to test them. Please use your quirk on your arms only, both arms to the forearm if you will. Kaminari nodded, then concentrated. It always started at one hand, then the second. When both hands were encased in electricity, it began to slowly creep up to his forearms, stopping just before the elbow. Excellent Kaminari, excellent. Now, please walk towards me. Kaminari blinked, losing the electricity. Wah, he refocused, then started creating more electricity. He slowly walked, concentrating deeply. It was hard, keeping the electricity running while moving his body. Walking was a motion he'd done a bajillion times, but it still felt so hard right now. It took him 3 minutes to walk 50 meters, with Ronin having him stop moving anytime his electricity went out. Ronin told himself. 3 minutes, 17 seconds. Not bad for the first time you've done that, He handed him a Gatorade. Drink up. You've got some time to shave off. You stopped 9 times. Let's see if we can get either of those numbers down, It was the principle that mattered. Walking with lightning hands wasn't that hard overall, but maintaining it, splitting it between 2 hands, and walking. The more details he added, the harder it became. It wouldn't even help Kaminari directly by being an attack, unless he wanted to walk toward people then use it. From what Midoriya saw, Kaminari didn't move when he used his full power. The electricity probably forced his muscles to tense, so he couldn't. Right now he wanted Kaminari to gain the focus to use his quirk in his body at the same time. He counted every time Kaminari lost control of his quirk and kept an old-fashioned cooking timer for his overall time. No point in bringing out his phone, or else they might hack it. He didn't even bring it. Excellent hustle. 3 minutes, 12 seconds, and only 8 stops. Just shaving off 1 stop improved your time. Kaminari had to move slower when he was concentrating, but cutting out the stop meant he still moved faster overall than last time. Kaminari's excitement was a reward unto itself. He wasn't sure if the boy was aware of just how little he improved, but at least he was working. Great. I'm going to start walking to you, so restart the time. He walked back and forth, his brow dampening with the effort he put in. Kaminari was only wearing a t-shirt now, but he still looked hot. Electricity wasn't exactly a cool refreshing breeze, after all. After just 30 trips back and forth, he ironed out most of the stops and was at 2 minutes 39 seconds. He wasn't fast, but he was improving, with only 1 or 2 stops when he tried to move too fast. Relax. Trying to go fast slows you down. You tense up, you mess up. Remember that. You tense up, you mess up. He always repeated anything that might be important, and Kaminari echoed it back to show he remembered it. Kaminari repeated it as he walked, eyes focused on his arms as the electricity sparked. By taking his time, he'd be slower overall but much more smooth. As he repeated the lame mantra Midoriya made up on the spot, he finished his first no-stop walk. Only took over an hour of training to learn how to walk again. Excellent. Midoriya clapped, bringing Kaminari out of his state of focus. Fine work Kaminari. Excellent. He laughed a little, but then refocused with a smile. Again. They broke off at 4. Kaminari now could walk at a normal pace with his lightning hands, and was very proud of it. They stopped to discuss the next part of the training and how this tied into the thunderclap and flash. Right now, your version is the same as mine, Midoriya explained. We're gonna begin to put your quirk into your version, so it's actually your own version instead of a copy of mine. Kaminari nodded. Now that you can divide your attention, we're going to practice a new version. I want you to only use the lightning on your legs. Got it. Wait, no I don't got it. What? You'll be using your quirk on your legs now. Same thing as last time. We start with you just standing around until you get it, then you start walking around, then you walk without losing control. Midoriya tapped his arm to make his point. You seem more used to using your electricity with your arms, so I assume that'd be a good place to start. Now that you know what you're going to be doing, you can focus and practice the quirk usage instead of the movements. Kaminari nodded, then stretched his legs again. When we getting food? All this quirk use is making me hungry, but the Gatorade is pretty good. Midoriya tossed him a protein bar. I'm thinking 5. Eraserhead, you wanna eat anywhere? Quote. I'm not going out to eat with you. He could actually see the moment Eraserhead realized that, if Ronin was going to eat, he'd take off his helmet. Quote. Fine. Something light, I need to move tonight. Midoriya nodded, thinking of nearby places. Kaminari, get to work. We'll discuss this more next time you get to the table. Kaminari nodded, then closed his eyes. Before he started walking, he had to focus on generating electricity in that place. It started at his body, then trailed down slowly. He couldn't see all the sparks due to his pants, but he could hear them. You should include your hips Kaminari, especially if it makes it easier. Listening to the comment interrupted his concentration, but Kaminari nodded. Thanks, sensei. I think I can handle that. With all the positive reinforcement, it encouraged the student to take more risks. Someone who was being chastised might also follow his words and try, but they were much more likely to give up. Kaminari refocused, generating more and more sparks. Then, slowly, as if there were weights on his leg, he moved his leg. And immediately lost his concentration. You tense up, you mess up. Gotta go slower. Never before had a kid looked so determined to go slow. Kaminari reset himself and spent 10 minutes just sitting there, generating electricity off his legs. Try to divide your attention in your own ways, like talking while generating electricity. At the start, even breathing sometimes interrupted him. Now he could breathe easily enough, so it was time to take baby steps. Quote dot dot dot. I need. Shit. He restarted, calmed his breathing, then spoke again. Quote dot dot dot. I need. Fruits. Or nuts. Lot of. Energy to replay ace. Didn't lose it. Ah, shit. Shouldn't have said anything. Midoriya made notes and nodded, writing down foods to bring tomorrow. Is yogurt good? I know a good yogurt place nearby. That would have fruits and nuts, and yogurt is a good source of energy. He should know, it was practically his entire breakfast any day he had to rush. Kaminari finished resetting, then jerkily nodded. Sounds great. Never. Had I it. How did you never have yogurt? It wasn't exactly rare food. Whatever, that wasn't a question for him. Eraserhead, you good with yogurt? Whatever. Somebody was abounding with life and looked like he could really use the energy. Got it. Excellent job, Kaminari. We'll break for now and go get food. No point in trying to waste time. Midoriya donned his super stupid looking cloak. Come on, I'll pay. Aizawa followed closely, but Ronin didn't ever take out a phone or wallet. When they got there, he paid with cash instead of a card. He wasn't sure where he put the money. The two ate as they walked back, with Ronin just holding his cup. He tried probing him. Something wrong, Ronin? Yes. Why is Midnight running at us? He pointed to a figure coming from UA. Eraserhead. There's a Nomu attack in Hosu City, and Nezu wants all available staff there now. That was bad. All Might was out of hours by now, and most people weren't still in school. He was there because he'd been watching the idiot and the vigilante. It wasn't like UA had on-campus living, that'd save him a pretty penny. There's more than one Nomu. Oh yeah, Ronin had seen the first Nomu. He provided covering fire for the students. And he still didn't know why Ronin had been there. Hosu City is 30 minutes away by train. You better get going. See you tomorrow, Kaminari. We'll break here. Something dangerous has come up. Oh, you gotta go help Eraserhead. Can I come, please? I am your apprentice. That wasn't a bad idea. Ronin had shown off he was more than capable of killing people if he wanted to, and nobody had any problems if these Nomus died. The problem was convincing him, or doing it in a way that didn't gratify him. Quote That is not up to me. Eraserhead and Midnight, I would be honored if my apprentice could come with you to Hosu City. Ever the traditionalist, Ronin bowed from the hip. Kaminari looked between them and mimicked the motion, adding his own words, or word. Please. Quote Whatever, just hurry up. Kaminari might be a risk, but Ronin should be a good enough babysitter to keep him out of danger. He was sure Nezu would love the idea. Kaminari was stuck between his actual teacher and a hot babe. His principal sat opposite his teachers, and next to him was Ronin. Quote I don't suppose All Might will be coming. A good question. Where was he? I'm afraid he's predisposed at the moment. Unfortunate. We might even have to deal with Stain while we're there, but hopefully, he's not active right now. Him cutting down heroes on the clock is the last thing we need. Ronin said it like it was certain the hero killer would be out. Wasn't exactly encouraging. At least I have all my tools. You're already wearing all of yours, Kaminari. Kaminari had been training in his, but he found that he might need to start modifying it soon. Ronin would probably have some ideas but might want him to build the new suit himself. At least it would be functional that way. Yes, sensei. Any advice? Ronin looked outside the jet, contemplating deeply. All that practice you've done is about to come into play. If you need help, ask. There will be other heroes besides the ones in this jet. We'll be working with them, some for minutes at a time, some for a few seconds. Remember to properly communicate to avoid any mishaps. We'll just be focusing on saving civilians instead of fighting the Nomus, so stay calm. Midoriya only had two thoughts as they flew on the jet. How the fuck did UA have a jet? He checked their expenses once a month, and he never saw shit for a fucking jet. No fuel, no parts, where did they get it? Was it lent to them? Why? Second thought, how the fuck did he and Kaminari get pulled into this clusterfuck? He knew they should have trained at the beach. It would have been illegal use of a quirk in public, but fuck it. No supervision, no paying for Eraserhead's food, and no Hosu City incident. Who did they think he was? He was 15, goddamn it. But he couldn't back out now. What, did they think he'd give up the game now? He was going to run with this lie all the way to the finish. Actually, Ronin, I think you should be able to take on Nomus. Nezu spoke like a fucking liar. Did he see the same shit Midoriya saw in the USJ? That thing was as good as All Might. The fuck was he gonna do to take it down safely? We're allowed to kill them this time, so you shouldn't have to restrain yourself so much. Quote Oh. I see. He could kill. Fuck was he worried about then? Kaminari better have some glasses, because Ronin always wondered how many people Yamato could dice up, and the kid was going to be in the splatter zone. Chapter and notes. Yo. Been a while since I used that one. Short chapter, short notes. Let's go. I don't mention any kind of breathing a lot for most of his attacks, but in boxing at least you are supposed to breathe out as you attack, no matter what punch you're throwing. Not sure that applies to other martial arts, but I'll apply it until told otherwise. Assume Midoriya is using a breathing technique most if not always when fighting. I don't mention it, but Midoriya hasn't really developed any new breathing patterns. He has worked on and still using the same two, violent breathing, the one he accidentally discovered, and serene breathing, the one he uses when he meditates. We might explore some new ones later. Is Eraserhead a little jealous? Yes. The problem with UA that no one points out is that these people are heroes first, teachers second. While what I said about the ultimate form of knowing something is to teach it applies, some of these people probably shouldn't be teachers. Looking at you, Midnight. Midoriya wanted to be a teacher before being a vigilante since his whole goal is for heroes to learn martial arts and be better equipped. He'd rather teach people than fight. The teachers at UA are good, but are in no way, shape, or form the best teachers. Their main job isn't to be teachers, every single one of them went to school to be a hero first. The fact that they can teach it all is amazing, but they're shown not to be very good at interacting with their students. Ectoplasm drowns his students during math, Present Mike can't figure out how to interact with his class, and Midnight is a sexual lawsuit in the making. For Kaminari and the point of walking, I don't think I've ever seen him do his million-volt shock and walk at the same time. I think it freezes up his body so he can't move, and Midoriya is trying to teach him to do both, even if it means the shock is less effective. He might have and I missed it, but I'm pretty sure every time he moves while using his super move he's either already in motion like jumping or gets shoved by an outside force. A has a jet. Will I address how? Maybe. Chapter 57, Ronin vs Stain. Chapter summary. Ronin was confidently dragged into the Hosu City Nomu attack, but Midoriya doesn't know what's going on or why he's there. And is contemplating his life choices up to this moment. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Ronin wasn't too surprised when they had to land outside of the city. He was completely quiet now, except when responding to his pupil and voicing the occasional question. His mind raced a mile a minute, thinking out what to do when they got there. Your students are at a lot of hero agencies. Any here? His legs were crossed, hands on his lap. He looked the epitome of calm but radiated killing intent now. It was obvious to most that he was possibly the most eager to arrive in Hosu. Heroes got to see how many people they could kill anytime things got too dangerous. Vigilantes, especially ones who wanted to last long, didn't kill to avoid the eye of the law. However, this wouldn't even count on his killing record. He could massacre every Nomu in the city, and might actually be rewarded for it. It would be a great experiment for the vigilante, to see how lethal he really was. It was a great experience for them too. They'd get to accurately see just what threat level Ronin was. Most of the top 10 were extremely good, but could only show their full potential when in life or death scenarios when they were allowed to kill. Some were like Endeavor, who'd kill as long as he could reasonably get away with it. Few were like Wash, who was mostly a rescue hero and had barely any kill records. It'd be a chance to see how Ronin operated when he didn't hold himself back. Well, we only seem to have one. Tenya Iida, from Class 1A. He's apprenticing with normal hero. Ronin nodded, tearing it apart as soon as it came up. The brother of Tensai Iida, Ingenium. In Hosu. If you think he's here for an apprenticeship, you're an idiot. Ronin was showing off his research and belittling them at the same time. Best case scenario, normal hero's not in Hosu today. You should have refused the apprenticeship. He will be as focused as you have forethought. He didn't bother to look at any of them as cut them down, staring instead out the opposite window. Will you be traveling by car into the city? We all will. Nezu might not have liked the berating, but it just showed how much research Ronin did. They were genuine criticisms, and worse, they were probably right. The streets should be evacuated. It's only been 12 minutes since it started. 12 minutes is a long time to try and stay alive. Ronin stood as soon as the jet stopped, opening the door for himself and jumping out. Instead of getting into the limo, the only thing available, he stood atop it. With how little endurance most heroes have, you should hurry. Dude, Kaminari said as he looked out, shaking his head. He's so cool. Nezu was amazed that the vigilante didn't fall off as they drove, staying cemented to the roof of the car somehow. Ronin shouted whenever he wanted to speak to them. How many Nomu are there so far? Nezu flicked through the information worriedly. This wasn't normally their thing, but a lot of people were called in to help because of its sheer size. At least 50. There were hundreds of reports, but Nomus weren't exactly easy to keep track of as they ran around. 50 was a conservative guess. That explains why we can already see some heroes. There appear to be some strange creatures on the road. They could see the massive bodies, and if one looked closely the exposed brains. This could be troublesome. They had brought Recovery Girl, Midnight, and Aizawa, along with Ronin. It was a little troublesome to have to stop the car in order to deal with them, but they didn't want Ronin jumping off and getting ditched. It'd be easier too. Duties call style, first form. No Russian. Bang. 2 pistols, 7 rounds each. Enough to take care of anything alive, and 1 to spare. They spun on his fingers as he stood on the car roof, admiring his handiwork. The car had shaken from the shockwave of the 2 simultaneous blasts. The momentum of the bullets was pushed forward by his gloves, the feedback was absorbed into his bodysuit, and the bullets pushed onward and spinning faster inside of twin tornadoes. What was that? Did a bomb go off? Are you alright? Midnight hollered, leaning out the window. I am alive, no bombs have gone off that I am aware of, and the problems are being dealt with. He kept it brief. Tell the driver to go faster. It's been 13 minutes now, and every second counts. They weren't even going 200 kilometers an hour yet. When were they planning on getting there? Nobody but the driver paid attention to 2 corpses, who could more accurately be described as crushed than shot by the way their bodies caved in on impact, twisted by some strange force and plastered into the ground. Ronin only had to shoot 3 more times, reholstering his guns when they finally arrived. Nezu, do you have a map of Nomu activity? I'll also take the location of normal hero. He stepped off the top of the limo, talking with the heroes and leaving the lone witness of his massacre shaking inside the cab. He got to talk to normal hero himself, and sure enough, no students in sight. I think I last saw him 2 blocks to the east, moving civilians. I'm sorry I can't be of more help, but I need to take care of civilians. This is his mistake, and you have a job as a hero. Keep it up. He walked that way confidently, sure he could find something to kill along the way. These guns were great. He hadn't gotten a chance to try the magazines with bullets in them until now. Kaminari began to trail him. Wait Ronin, you shouldn't be going off alone. He admired the Nomus who sprang at him as he left the group. Big, ugly, and annoying. He was really going to enjoy this. 2 came from the air, 1 because it jumped, the other because it flew. 3 more approached from the ground. What was this, a zombie movie? They were just asking for him to kill them all. He already played with his guns. It was time for Yamato. Quote. Kaminari. Observe. He flipped his cloak, exposing his blade and drawing it slowly. I'm only going to do this a lot tonight. He flicked it out, the blade radiating its smoke. He controlled it with the gloves, eyeballing where Nomus would all line up. The smoke was spread thin, but it didn't need to be bunched up. It just needed to be there. Weeping demon style, formless. The blue smoke writhed around, then clung to each creature as they entered its range. He teleported more smoke through the smoke, admiring the lines the smoke drew on their bodies. He hadn't even stopped walking. He began to spin the sword to spread more of it, smiling as came closer and closer to the collision. Slash dimension. It fell like snow behind him. No one was quite sure what happened. The Nomu's bodies turned white, then there was a scream, and then nothing. No slash, no cuts. And then it fell. Blood like rain, bits of their bodies. It was impossible to tell what was what. The 5 Nomus had been turned to paste on the floor, coating everything but avoiding the Ronin and his disciple. Shig. Ronin had flicked the blood off his sword and now sheathed his sword, still walking. He hadn't broken pace yet. Come on Kaminari. It appears we're going on a scavenger hunt. Ronin didn't bother to look back, but they could hear his laughter from under the helmet. Hey, won't this be fun? He had Kaminari dash attack when he was confident that he could support the boy. He had never practiced against an actual target until now, and it was good to get live practice in a safe environment. They'd have to settle for this instead. Excellent Kaminari. A good hit on the leg. He ran along, never stopping. He might have been looking casual, but that boy was in serious danger. Do you think you can finish it yourself? Yes sir. He felt bad, knowing most real heroes wouldn't put their apprentices in such dangerous situations, but he had a few ideas created by his slash dimension and one could help him find the boy. No better time to try it than now. And Kaminari, Iida's quirk sounds like a normal engine, right? He'd never met the boy for long, so it was hard to remember. Yeah, and kinda like a fire when he uses his burst thing. Why? Ronin began to slash rapidly, then jumped through his own portal, falling 10 feet before landing atop a building. Now, he needed to concentrate. New powers were best made in safe environments, where one could test them and answer questions about them. Now was not that time, but he never needed to use Yamato like this. He pinned the blade in the ground, turned on smoke, then turned it to max power and forced the smoke in every direction as far as he could, then closed his eyes. The smoke drifted across the town, all one large network of portals. Through it, and by sticking his head into the cold dimension without crossing through another portal, he could see and hear sights and sounds coming through the portals. He turned his portal network into a glorified phone network. Kurogiri would be spinning in his sleep if he saw him use a teleportation quirk so stupidly, but he needed information and this was how he'd do it. The best part of the search was the sound in question. No one would be using an engine in the city, and he had just heard one, so the sound was fresh in his mind. He strained his ears, searching for the sound. Then, faintly, sword slashes in an engine. He withdrew his sword and shouted to his disciple. Kaminari, I'm going that way, I'll be in an alleyway, and I'll be fighting Stain. Bring the pro heroes. He didn't check to see if Kaminari heard but jumped through his already existing portal network to get as close as he could. People are dying, monsters are attacking, and you come to settle your petty grudge. Stain shook his head. You aren't even trying to help anyone other than yourself. He pointed with a thumb towards Native. Any real hero would have grabbed Native before trying to take me down, but you were so fixated on me you didn't even think about the people you're supposed to save. Another fake, just like Ingenium, no, worse. He licked the blade, paralyzing the young boy, then flipped the blade to pierce the child and kill him. Goodbye. You're an offering to a more just world. Shut up. Shut up. Iida was unfocused and beyond reason. No matter what you say, you're the criminal who hurt my brother. Bang bang bang. The air bullets took Stain in the side. They were loud so they couldn't be hidden, but they were so fast they didn't need to be. Stain couldn't move in time and was hit by 2 of the 3 shots, forcing him backward. Quote. Jackpot. The 4th figure in the alleyway spun his guns around his fingers, trying to take it all in. His duster drifted in the wind, and a black mask hid his entire face. His whole body was a plastering of grays and blacks. His guns glinted in the moonlight as they spun, and his sheath stuck out from under his coat. His head turned across the alley slowly. So. His guns stopped spinning, both ready to fire. What's going on in this neck of the woods? This isn't your fight, Ronin. The kid on the floor, that must be Tenya Iida. Looked like everyone got hit by Stain's quirk, and he still wasn't completely sure of how it worked. His gaze shifted to the other guy, Native, who wasn't talking. We've already fought once, Ronin. You didn't win then. Go back, and you might live another day. These fakes need to be culled. Good threats. Strong threats. If only he had a choice. Did they think he wanted to be here? He sucked against smart opponents. He'd rather be slashing up idiots and seeing how else he could use Yamato. There had been some incredible developments recently, and the sonar use was amazing. Quote. What are you talking about, kid? Who else's fight is it? He began to walk forward again, keeping his guns relaxed. No point in pointing, the added tension might make him miss. A hero's job is to save people. Native, Iida, I'm here to save you. You run off now. I won't chase. These words were no longer to comfort the people he saved, but to the killer in front of him. The heroes are coming, and they'll stop you even if I can't. You should escape now. He blasted both guns and sidestepped the needle thrown at him. He was pretty sure he's the one who made that needle. You at least know you can't save them on your own. You're better than the child, but everything is better than a fake. Even a villain like you. Someone has to do it. They reached an impasse, and Stain wasn't too torn up about it. I believe it's time to finish this. Let's see if you got any better at least. He threw a knife at Iida's exposed neck, trying to cut it open but the blade was blasted into the ground by an air bullet. The needles lacked the power to kill in one hit, but the knives could be knocked around by the guns because of how flat they were. Ronin opened fire, shooting shot after shot at the vigilante. This alley was easier to take control of than a blank rooftop. Stain moved around, throwing needles at his hands, but Ronin finally had a good solution. He took a step back into the side, spinning to show his back to the vigilante. The first need struck the metal jacket and bounced off as he performed a spinning back kick, knocking a trash can into the air and shooting both guns into it repeatedly. It flew through the air, a third wide-range target for the murderer to dodge. It alone was harmless, but when you added the area denial of his guns, suddenly the area was becoming more and more cramped. Stain kicked straight off it, going for the up and over approach as he charged. This put him straight in the path of the guns, with nowhere to run. It also put the guns in a predictable spot. Stain threw needles where Ronin's hands would have to go, to bounce off his chest, his arms pulling something out of his coat. Right as he began to fall, Ronin finished assembling the polearm. One last quick spin of the spearhead to lock it in, then the entire spear spun to point at Stain. Dance with me, Dingner. The spearhead surged forward and locked into position, braced against the falling Stain to impale him. It was the first time Stain realized he might not walk away from this fight alive. Stain slashed downward with his own sword, using it to knock the spear away and save himself from being gutted. Ronin went with the attack, since it was too fast to dodge, but added to the momentum. The spear spun to its opposite end and still rammed into Stain's shoulder, missing its intended stabbing point and stabbing destination, but still hitting the murderer. Instead of adjusting back, Ronin kept the spear as it was, pointing the dull end towards Stain while he adjusted his grip on the spear. The two stared for a moment before Stain moved in again, still not using a ranged weapon and now relying on the sword. A terrible choice. The spear was the natural counter to the sword. Legendary swordsmen had died at the hands of farmers armed with pikes, because of how simple the advantage was. Serene style fourth form, Hurricane. Stain should have noticed his odd grip. The back hand was on the front of the spear, and the front hand on the back. The front arm covered his body, and the back hand still had a thrusting grip. A thrusting grip, but for the sharp side, which was pointed backward. He spun the spear around, the spearhead rising up and over, and putting his entire body into the cut. It was as if he was slashing with a sword, performing violence with Yamato. The spear ends switched places, and the added length and leverage gave him better momentum to parry and knock Stain's slash to the side. But Hurricane didn't end there. It forced his spear down and gave him the perfect momentum and position for a rising stab. He stepped forward, giving a single jab that extended his range. It shot forward, stretching 6 entire feet from his body. The first hit knocked the enemy's weapon out of the way, and the second banked on their lack of defense. This attack was designed to crush anyone who parried his sword blows by putting 2 attacks so close together, they couldn't both be blocked. Stain couldn't dodge, no one without super speed could have. He managed to change the path of the spear again instead, taking it to the side instead of straight into the stomach. It cut along his side, and he winced. Stain leapt backward several times, going as if to grab his side but instead threw a knife at Native. He could just bleed him to death if need be. The child wore armor, but Native was open for attacks without anything other than that poncho he wore. It was swatted out of the air by another sweep of that spear. It seems I'll need to take care of everyone today. Didn't think I'd get to use this move for this. The blunt end was jammed under Native's arm, flipping him up and over. He was flung 10 feet down the alleyway behind Ronin. Ronin repeated the move, muttering the name of the move to himself as he rolled the fake hero down the alley as well. Serene style, third form. Whirlpool. It seemed a strange attack until Stain realized the real purpose. Ronin was using it to throw the heroes out of the way of the fight, but he had no doubt that if he got hit by it he'd end up thrown straight into a wall, then impaled to death, or until he couldn't fight back anymore. The other attack, Hurricane, had the same purpose. People usually associated spinning with whirlpools and hurricanes, and the signature trait of these 2 attacks was their spinning motion. The move Whirlpool moved people around and could either throw someone out of the way or into another attack. The harder to realize one was the one from earlier, Hurricane. That one could spin the spear around, meaning it turned the spear from a lethal to a non-lethal by switching the striking end. Ronin's main weak point was his fingers. Stain didn't see any other direct way of getting his blood. He had learned from the last fight, but not in the way Stain thought he would. Instead of covering the fingers with armor, he covered them with a weapon that stopped him from getting close. Any range attacks would be swatted, and the free-formed handle with no real beginning or end meant his hands could slide into any position. Ronin himself was now practically invincible against Stain. There were no openings he could see that could get him blood safely. Stain had no such body armor. Even where he did have armor, it had been run through regardless because of how much force Ronin could generate with his spear, piercing it like a knife stabbing a tin can. Ronin's weakness wasn't a physical one though. It was that he wasn't Stain's goal. His goal was the 2 people Ronin had thrown behind himself. If Stain could kill them, he could leave safely. He had no doubt his mobility was better, especially now that Ronin had a spear to worry about. It was too big to be brought into the chase. The 2 vigilantes looked each other in the eye. Monsters screamed out in the night. The moon seemed to shine as they adjusted their grips. The master assassin rolled his wrist. His swordsmanship was much better than the other, but the other had proved now he was no swordsman. From needles to guns, and now from swords to spears, if something didn't work he'd change. It was time to take a page from his book. The nameless blade rolled his shoulders. His spearmanship could control an area, but for how long? He'd been training all day. He was tired. His dinner was yogurt and some fruit, but he didn't want to take off his mask so he gave it to his disciple along with all his protein bars. Besides, he didn't have to worry about himself. The 2 people behind him still weren't moving, and he'd have to stay here until one of them got up and dragged the other away. Right now, they were both at an impasse. Neither cared about themselves or the other. All their thoughts led to and ended at the 2 paralyzed victims, sitting at the end of the alley, and the heroes that would eventually be coming. This was no longer a battle of who was stronger, or who could better use their weapon, but of stamina. Chapter and notes. I think my 3rd or 4th musical insertion into my work. Hopefully they work with the tone, not really sure. This one is one of the songs I listened to when I wrote the chapter. This chapter starts off with Ronin but shifts to Midoriya as he forces himself to be calm. For the entire mess, it's not exactly clear whose perspective we have. It switches and drifts, with only 2 sections, I think having a clear narrator for the entire section. A real quick mention for the guns. Both guns still haven't been name dropped, and I promise I will someday. Not today though. For the gun's power in blowing people up, a normal bullet imparts enough force to break ribs. Who knew, something that can kill you has enough force to kill you. The problem was literally everything else about the guns, starting with the gauntlets. The gauntlets, still unnamed, push things away more the closer they are. That means the bullets were getting pushed the second they were fired, with enough force to move people. It's not much, but every bit helps. The guns, kindness and name not known, were the big factor. The air bullet takes away most air resistance, turns it into a charged shot that shoves people into walls and breaks bones from 30 feet away, and imparts even more spin into the bullets. Air resistance was dead, shot by guns that break it. The guns also imparted a ton of force into the bullets, resulting in the bullets not just hitting their targets but hammering them. No comment about the gun style, or its first form. A little bit of a shuffle in the intro dialogue for the fight, but nothing major. The bigger change right now is the lack of Todoroki. With no heart-to-heart at the sports festival, he's not in Hosu and is still really edgy. Maybe someone else will let him open up, but they're not available right now. This fight is going to take my own spin by still having it be challenging. Most versions of scene remove the tension, but I don't actually give a shit about Iida as a person and Native is very murderable, so since the bar's low for me as an author it sort of rises for Midoriya because Iida doesn't really do much going forward that's necessary. Getting Midoriya to fight Stain is, right now, the end of it as far as I'm aware in the canon plot. Everything else Midoriya won't be around to do, since he's a vigilante right now and Iida's a student. The 2 versions of this fight I've seen have either no tension, because they made their protagonist way too powerful, or don't exist. I have never yet seen a fanfic where they make the Stain fight a challenge. Please send me a fanfic where they do if you know of it and it's good. Stain is a murderer, and he's damn good at it. Stop nerfing him, it makes Ingenium the First look like a bitch since he lost. I hope that, by copying the original, pushing the death threat onto another character that I don't give as much of a shit about, I get to make more tension. Easy tension. Place a character people like in the way of harm other than the protag. Literally everyone other than Midoriya himself can die, and this fanfic will still work. Don't write scenarios where the audience knows a character has to live, because if they don't the story can't continue. I'm even beginning to turn it into a story where Midoriya himself can die. Observant people might have noticed something weird about the title and description, especially compared to my other fanfic. Check it out please, I need reviews so I can know how to make it better. Ronin, no all for one quirk gifts, no one for all pity quirks. Just an idiot, a sword, and way too much practice for a sane person. Nowhere in that does it say who Ronin actually is, because Ronin itself is just a name. Names can be passed on, and the first Ronin does have an heir now. Someone else who actually fits the description a little better. An idiot with a sword, who only learns by practicing way too much. Chapter 58. Chapter Summary. A new chapter for real this time. If you saw there was an upload and found nothing, might be. I wanted to experiment with some things, and this fanfic was right here to mess with. Ronin and Stain, fighting. Also, the guns are already named. They have been for almost 20 chapters by now. You have great names, I get it, but I already picked them. ... Although some of the names are so good I went to give him more guns. Hold on, I gotta look up more guns. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Stain moved his left hand to better grip the katana's pommel. Ronin adjusted his forearm to get better distance. At the mouth of the alley, two figures lay, tossed there like ragdolls. Stain had to move first. He was on the offensive, and Ronin would win if neither side did anything. He experimented, throwing Ronin's own move in his face. He grabbed a trash bag and threw it at him, then followed in its wake, hoping to make use of the blind spot it'd create. The problem that the movies never addressed was, when in a blind spot like this, it becomes your blind spot too. The spear swatted it to one side, and they made eye contact again. Stain was in range of the spear, but Ronin was not in range of the katana. The shoulders relaxed, then the spear jutted forward. Stain, however, grabbed the trash bag from the air, shoving it on the spearhead and attempting to force his way through, pushing the now harmless spearhead out of the way. The spear dipped, but then spun around. The dull end now pointed toward him, and he could tank a hit from that. Serene style third form, whirlpool. There was barely any build-up, but it danced past his sword and struck his shoulder, knocking him backward. It wasn't a lot of force, it just took advantage of how unbalanced Stain had been. He threw himself backward with a hit, right as Hurricane crashed where he would have landed. The blade tore through the trash bag, spilling garbage onto the ground. It'd make it harder for Stain to approach slightly, which was exactly Ronin's plan. Every little bit helped. Ronin flicked his blade one more time, staring down the killer. This battle was taking energy he just didn't have. He used the sword and guns because they required so little effort on his part. He felt he'd fail instantly if he had to go into a sword duel. Stain tested him again, throwing another knife. It had more weight than the needles but was an easier target. This knife wasn't aimed at him, but native. Rather than the fancy option like striking it out of the air, Ronin just put himself in the knife's way and took the hit. His chest was ridiculously padded with his jacket, vest, and bodysuit, so it could take some extra abuse. He did wish he opted for swatting the easier target, the knife, when Stain threw a needle at Iida. The needles were faster, smaller targets, and could be used to prick a target to death. However weak it was, though, it'd still probably kill if it hit the throat. He used the spear to push off the ground and shove himself between the target and his attacker. He needed to go on the offensive. Stain would win if he just sat back by waiting until he was too tired to block an attack. Ronin stepped forward, pulling his spear back. Stain had gotten ready to throw another needle, so he wasn't ready to deflect more spear thrusts with his sword. He didn't say the name out loud, giving away what attack he was going to do next, but said it in his head. The names were designed to help him remember the motions for each attack. Serene style, first from, Red Rain. The light flurries of jabs weren't heavy or powerful, like tide and waves, but they were fast. He just wanted to interrupt the knife and needle throwing, or hurt Stain enough that he stopped. Stain had another needle in his hand but didn't hesitate to drop it to parry. His swordsmanship and strength both outclassed his skill with a spear, but his first parry would be weak by being rushed. He'd have to break through Stain's weakest parry. Right as it should have impacted, something switched. The spear went back a few centimeters and the parry that would have sent it flying instead sent a great deal of force into the spearhead, along the shaft that was now braced against Ronin's body, and wasting it all as Ronin began to rock backward, pulling the spear with him. Stain's sword was forced to bounce off as the spear came back, cocked and ready. Stain's eyes widened as he put all his force into pulling his sword back into position, to block the next attack that was aimed straight at his heart. He took a step back to move with his sword as it was forced up to gain distance, eyes focused only on the spearhead that twisted slightly like a bullet aimed to kill. It rocketed forward, fully extending to 6 feet from Ronin's body. That was enough to hit Stain with room to spare. It would have been easy to knock to the side if his sword was in position, but the first attack had been bait for a parry. Ronin had braced to be hit, then threw Stain's sword back and out of the way for the second strike. Stain couldn't move fast enough to block it. The spearhead closed the distance, the fight almost ending when Stain's legs became limp, giving out under him. He fell backward ungracefully, watched the spear go straight over him with too much force to adjust to his new posture and finish off the killer. Stain pushed off the ground, underneath the spear's body, and aimed to tackle the warrior from underneath. He'd throw the smaller opponent to the ground, then kill his targets with a knife each and run. He had dropped the sword. It was too big and only got in the way. He moved forward by pushing off the ground with one arm, rolling onto his feet, and diving for the opponent's legs. Ronin shifted the spear so the spearhead pointed straight up as he lashed out with a front kick, striking the assassin in the stomach where he'd been cut earlier. The unexpected pain caused him to tense up as Ronin drove the entire weight of the spear down at him. It wouldn't be lethal, but it would hurt. Stain decided to tank it out, pushing forward as the pole struck down on him. It was the same shoulder as before, and that shoulder was started to hurt quite a bit. He pushed into Ronin's waist as the warrior's hips turned, making Stain realizing why the warrior hadn't tried to block him. The warrior's katana nearly gouged out his eye with its handle, something he hadn't noticed as he nearly face-planted into it in his rush. His neck strained to avoid it, crashing into Ronin with his entire body in as straight a line as he could, trying to push him over. Ronin was forced a single step back. His boots grabbed the ground, cementing him in place at the feet. The assassin wrapped an arm around his stomach to try and push past him, but he needed to make sure the killer couldn't take one more step forward. He ditched his spear after clubbing him in the back and grabbed the assassin by the shoulders, trying to push him back. His knees were bent to give him the ability to move since his legs were so strong. They were the muscles that humans trained every day, and Ronin trained his relentlessly. All the dashing he did, the parkour he practiced, the kicks he polished, every single one of them had turned his legs into steel. His legs turned into the platform that he pushed off of, driving the killer back. His right hand had a crushing grip on Stain's left shoulder, the shoulder he'd been hitting. It was time to finish this, as ugly as it took to win. He grabbed one of his needles and held it for the murder stroke. He went straight for the shoulder, the easiest target. He could kill if he went for the head, but it'd be too difficult from how close they were. Stain's arm lurched to grab Ronin's left. A needle was in it, poised to stab him. He has to adjust his posture, pushing into Ronin. Ronin was sturdier than his frame would lead you to believe. Stain had felt the thick muscles underneath the coat when he tried to drive the warrior down with a tackle, every single one tense to restrain him in place. Ronin made it clear, he would not be falling down, not without a fight. Stain held the warrior's wrist, trying to force it down or away, anywhere but his shoulder. Instead of moving away though, there seemed to be some strange force pulling the arm toward him, or him towards the arm. Ronin didn't flinch at Stain's attempts to move his arm, gripping Stain's shoulder harder to make sure he couldn't avoid the needle. He was forcing this to be a contest of pure muscle, and somehow, this new monster's teeth were just as sharp as the old ones. Stain had to adjust his feet, and the instant one foot rose, he was pushed back by the beast in front of him. Stain himself had risen to be almost head-to-head with Ronin, and forced over a foot backward. There was no expression on the warrior's mask, just a reflection of his own desperation. This close he could hear the slow, calm breathing. Ronin wasn't even excited. He was just working his job. They both were. It was restrained, but there was a willingness to kill that most heroes didn't have, letting him know that this newcomer was ready and willing to let Stain be his first kill. He was aiming to end this right here and right now, the instant Stain hesitated. He couldn't give up yet. He had his own job to do, for society. He couldn't be beaten here. Stain took another step back and was pushed further, but switched his grip, trying to claw at the warrior's left hand. If he could scrape the fingers, he could get blood. He could win. Ronin's left was still held in place by Stain's right, but Stain's left was free to move. He let go of the body, rising up to try and claw him with his bare hands. Bam! Ronin's helmet crashed into his head, forcing him back. His grip slipped, but he still had enough of a hold to push the needle down. Ronin's needle scraped Stain's shoulder but didn't get the impalement he'd been looking for. Stain leapt backward as Ronin attacked again, aiming for the now exposed throat. Stain disengaged though, sliding away and hitting something with his foot. His eyes flicked, and he lurched down, grabbing a familiar object to his eyes but an unfamiliar to the touch. He jumped backward again, correcting his grip, and pointing it at its first master. Ronin had charged, but Stain swung wildly with his new weapon. He didn't strike Ronin with the spearhead, but the blow did stop his advance. It'd take some getting used to. Gingnir. A nice name. Stain adjusted his grip on Gingnir, taking the same stance as Ronin had. I think I'll take it. Ronin crouched, rubbing his arm that had been whacked, throwing him off course. Stain now held the distance advantage, and Ronin hadn't bothered to get a weapon that countered the spear the way the spear countered a sword. But what about two swords? Ronin drew Yamato and lurched forward, performing the sideways cut he'd finally got around to learning. It wasn't even hard, but it put the sword behind him to generate power, abandoning defense for that power. His upper body spun on his hips, his shoulders blades drew together, and he stepped into the swing to knock the spear away. He couldn't force himself close enough to attack Stain's body, but he could knock away the space that the spear threatened for a moment. Stain didn't know how to use the spear well enough and tried to resist it without properly bracing his legs. As a result, his entire body was forced back and sideways, giving Ronin the chance to kick up the other discarded weapon. Its weight was similar enough to the sword he'd practiced on to get it on the first try, even if he had to catch it by the wrong part. Didn't catch your name yet, I'm afraid. He moved out of Stain's range as he adjusted both swords to a one-handed grip, giving each a spin with his wrist before crossing them to form an X guard. Stain's sword had good weight, and the serrated edge was a welcome addition to his arsenal. I think I like you though. Muramasa. Ronin rolled both his wrists, then reformed his X guard. It could deflect any spear thrust easily enough but lacked the reach to strike back. Yamato and Stain's own sword glinted in the moonlight, side by side. Stain rolled his shoulder, smiling as he corrected his stance. Gingnir had an excellent balance. He could feel it from years of training. He had the reach advantage now that could help him get past Ronin, but lacked the threat that those two swords posed. Ronin was clearly aware he was a novice with a spear, while Ronin demonstrated at least some knowledge of dual wielding. So much had happened, yet so little had changed. It was a strange feeling, staring each other down, back to the positions they had started in. They were still focused on the two sacks of meat at the alley's entrance. They were still waiting for the sound of the heroes approaching. And neither could get what they wanted with the other standing. Stain thrust Gingnir at the air, adjusting to the new sensation of the weapon. He never would have imagined such a simple weapon was capable of moving so quickly if he hadn't seen it himself. He wasn't sure what it was capable of in his hands, but it was his best shot at coming out on top in this fight. Ronin ran the swords down each other's lengths, like a butcher cleaning his knives. Some of his sword attacks were one-handed, practically all drawing cuts were. The lunging overhead cut could be done with one or two hands. So could the flicker cut. He'd seen others fight with two swords. In anime, it'd be a challenge, but then again, easy victories weren't worth shit. Yamato might be able to beat Gingnir, but his odds were just as good at getting stabbed. He'd need both swords to trump the inferior range. Both breathed out, then looked each other in the eye. The feet came forward, weapons were pulled back to generate power, and steel clashed. Chapter End Notes. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, fun times. It's fun to watch two swordsmen fight, as you get to see the difference in their styles, but the difference in their style is that Ronin is good at sword fighting while Stain has mastered sword fighting. I hope I'm giving some good spear fighting for my fellow peasants, back from the days we killed horses with sharpened sticks of wood on the plains in front of the castle. Trying to go for an interesting fight that makes use of the terrain a little bit, using the surroundings more than just jumping off them. I'll do it again more next chapter, when both combatants are less familiar with their weapons and have to use more tricks to win. Speaking of weapons, the exchange of gifts. Haha yes, that joke was lame but worth it. I'll go in detail behind the two weapons and their namesakes. Gingnir is Odin's spear, but it's made by dwarves for Loki to give to Odin. In other words, it has a history of being passed on. Gingnir always returns whenever thrown to its master though. I wonder which one is the master. Stain's sword was not named, but Ronin gave it a quick joke name of Muramasa. Muramasa is a line of swords, forged by a blacksmith named Muramasa, that were believed to be cursed. It was said that they thirsted for blood, and could not be sheathed until they were satisfied. With Stain's quirk, it seemed like a fun reference. That's your history lesson for the day. Stain is now wounded, Ronin is now armed with weapons he doesn't know how to use, and soon someone should be getting up. Hope you enjoyed what I made with my time, thanks for sharing a little of your time with me. Chapter 59. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. The spear entered the sword's range, and the three blades clashed. The two swords collided with the cross guard, forcing it up. Stain brought the spear back instead of continuing the engagement that favored the warrior so well. He stepped backward as he withdrew, but Ronin himself remained fixed in place. He was tired and aiming for as little movement as possible now. Who fought with 2 swords? He had very little material now that he thought too hard about it. Zoro usually fought with 2, and only used the 3rd for special techniques. Inosuke used 2, but he had very little technique. It was tiring to hold a sword, and holding 2 made it worse. He had to hold his sword one-handed, then add another sword on top of that. This guard was good at stopping attacks though. Another thrust, and again both swords caught it and pushed it away. The scissored blades pushed it off course, then both came forward as he moved, slashing at the body. Stain, however, danced away again. He needed to save energy to chase the killer. They went back to starting positions, eyeing each other. Finally, after thinking through the guards he knew, he decided on one. He realized he had a technique in the making, a style that had been dormant for far too long. He was bringing it back, baby. Stain finished adjusting to the new motion. He'd be better at it if Ronin hadn't kept attacking his back shoulder, the one that was supposed to generate all the power for the thrust. A strong front shoulder meant you could aim, a strong back shoulder meant you had the strength to do damage. Ronin dropped his defenses, muttering, quote, "Been a while, huh?" He looked up, with both swords touching the ground. He swayed from side to side, chuckling. Kamoon. Stain took advantage of the down swords to stab at Ronin's body. Ronin swayed to his right, not bothering to raise an arm all the way to block. Joke style no. The thrust almost reached him as he flicked his left wrist counterclockwise, relative to himself. Muramasa rose from pointing to the floor, then to his right side, then caught the spear tip as it went up and flicked it away from his left side, the opposite direction his body swayed. His mind was completely calm and focused. He was entirely pissed off at Stain for stealing his spear. The detachment and fury mixed, to form something. Joker style, 3rd form. Hangman in the wind. His swaying motion pushed him out of the way, bobbing and weaving through attacks. When an attack came too close, it was swatted by his sword and helped push him away further. He took in all of Stain. His shoulders moving the spear. His legs adjusting their stance to generate power. His hunchback stopping him from fully breathing. The way his eyes kept switching to the other possible targets. He wasn't focusing on his opponent right now. Did he think he had the time? Who did he think Ronin was? Ronin seemed to become as high as a kite at the drop of a hat. Suddenly the grace was gone, replaced by laughter. Stain vaguely remembered a report he heard about. A dangerous criminal who nearly beat 4 people to death with needles alone, laughing through the night. Ronin laughed as he dodged one more attack, arching his back and pushing his chest into the air as he laughed. Had he snapped. Aye, a lot of people say that to me. Always wanted to myself. More laughter, then he leaned forward, putting his head in range of the spear. He attempted to hit Ronin over the head with it, raising the spear first before stepping in to put more power into the attack. Joker style. Let's call this the 5th form. Ronin weaved his head around as one of the blades, left again, smacked the spear. He stepped forward, letting his body roll around. Funky beatdown. It was to keep standing up, so why bother? He took one deep breath while standing up straight, his entire body rigid, then slunk into the attack, lurching forward at the hip. As his upper body went slack and was pulled forward and down, stepping in and raised his right hand, performing a one-handed violence. Stain was forced to try and defend against it, raising his spear to block. Almost instantly, he noticed the left arm flicker. It was too close for a cut, so what? Bam. The sword's pommel struck him in the side. He was forced to breathe out, and lower his guard. He tried to breathe in and raise Ner, but Ronin's left arm grabbed it and actually helped him raise it. And kept raising it until it was out of the way entirely. Ronin pulled him forward, as he turned slightly, bringing his left leg up and back, in position for a side kick. Stain couldn't block, so he instead tensed his core. He'd taken hits way worse than that beforehand and he was pulled forward as Ronin's right leg also left the ground, spinning the madman almost upside down before both legs rocketed out, kicking him in the face. He was sent upwards and back while Ronin was sent down, rolling out of it and running straight at a wall. Stain had a clear shot at the fakes, but the problem was he knew for certain he wouldn't live if he dropped the spear to throw anything at them. Instead, he had to hope that he could generate enough force to injure Ronin, then throw something or kill them with the spear. So, instead, he watched as Ronin ran in and up the wall, then kicked off and spun his entire body around like a top as he charged back into the fray. The spear came back up but was rammed down over and over again by 2 swords. It was difficult enough to get it up, but keeping it up against the frenzy was near impossible. Both swords came from the left and pushed down over and over, all against the backdrop of laughter. Ronin had snapped. He replicated Ronin's hurricane, a wise choice. It struck at the shoulder and pushed him away for a moment, breaking his flow. He spun out of the hit, still laughing, then adopted a fighting stance. Ronin's sword, the one in his right hand, was placed against his shoulder. Stain's sword, the one in his left hand, was left pointing downward as it rested against his leg. The edge pointed both downward and left. Ronin rolled his shoulders, giggling. Was this the real Ronin? He was sure now. Stain had fought a lot of people, but they all had something in common. They feared dying. This guy stuck his head out just to get a free hit. He laughed like a maniac and left the people he was supposed to guard just so he could try to crush his opponents. This guy was out of his fucking mind. This might the final fight. He might actually die here, he was sure of it. He was gonna die. He was sure of it. He had 2 swords and not a fucking clue how to use them. His body, instead of being tensed, relaxed. He had stopped trying to figure out what was happening and was just fighting with whatever bullshit he could think of. What were some of the other moves in Joke style? He couldn't remember. Maybe if he just started talking, he'd remember them. Joker style, Form 1. Pocket sand. Ronin blundered forward, laughing. This was so stupid. He still didn't have any pocket sand. He forgot to get more. Where was he going to get pocket sand in Hosu City in the middle of a fight? Did it really have to be sand? He dragged Muramasa along the ground, then flung trash into Stain's face. The dirt and garbage forced him to close his eyes, giving Ronin an opportunity to attack Aganan. What was that screaming sound? Why was something screaming above him? Why did God himself hate Midoriya so much? Instead of getting to take advantage of the blinded Stain, who flailed blindly for a moment before blinking his eyes clear, Ronin dove out of the way of something massive. A giant creature with its brain exposed. It was huge, with giant eyes that flailed around, and never stopped screaming. This was the closest Ronin had ever been to a Nomu. Not sure he liked it. He rolled away, mumbling. Oh, this just gets better and better, doesn't it? Both of them were forced back by the giant monster. It served as a threat to both of them, screaming and flailing as it swung at the nearest one. But for all its strength, it lacked the one thing Ronin had in spades. Technique. Both fighters took a moment to breathe with the tension gone. They no longer put pressure and stress on each other, not with this thing in the way. It was almost a blessing, as it allowed him to clear his head. He had a magic sword, for God's sake. Last time he relied on it too much, but this was too little. It was time to hit that middle ground. He stepped back, rolling his shoulders and letting it wear Stain out more and more before it suddenly switched to him, or rather, the people behind him. That was bad. Stain was fine, just a little winded. This thing wasn't a threat to either vigilante itself, but it forced him to deal with multiple targets. He'd have to start playing double or nothing, or his chances of victory slipped. He watched the monstrosity charge towards him. He'd been flailing before, but it was time to show his stuff. He practiced his parkour all the time, and this alley had plenty of shit to jump off of. If he was going to make Joker style strange, he was already coming up with the formless move. He squatted slightly, chuckling. His balance of violence and serenity had been whacked, with him using tons of violence and in serene despair. It was time to turn that on its head, and turn his fears into jokes. The Nomu charged the three figures, with the central one going limp again. Joker style, third form. Hangman in the wind. Instead of swaying from side to side, though, he swayed up to take a breath, then crossed his arms in front of him as he slouched forward, placing his swords on the opposite hip. Right hand and sword at left hip, and vice versa. Into thunderbreathing, first form, thunderclap and flash. He rocketed forward with what little energy he had, the two swords allowing him to swing from either direction. His last step usually forced him to turn in a certain direction to get more force, but since this attack came from both directions, he could turn either way, or just hit dead on. The Nomu flew straight at him, but instead of staying on the ground and attacking its stomach, he jumped up and kicked the body in the stomach, their two momentums colliding to do even more damage. His boots anchored him to the creature and allowed him to take one final step, using the creature as a base to attack the creature. The two swords crossed at the Nomu's neck, cutting the jugular as they crossed. All to finish into true violence. The swords came up, then the swords came down, both hammering into their respective sides of the neck, and finally killed the damn thing. It was screaming bloody murder, and now it finally shut up. It crashed down as Ronin goalie kicked the head at Stain before landing roughly back on the ground. There was a smack as Stain struck the head from the air, getting more familiar with it now that he got to deal with an easier opponent. Ronin spun off the ground again, getting to his feet. Learned to do that one on accident, you know. Some kid who likes sleeping way too much taught me. Riveting. The two charged again, fighting atop the first Nomu's dead body. Right in time to hear more screams. Oh, for God's sake. Something didn't make sense about Ronin. When they first met, he was overly confident but seemed aware he was going to lose. When they started fighting, he was extremely calm and in control the entire time, not even being hit once. But when they changed weapons, it was like a switch was flipped. People showed their real colors when they were faced with death, but Ronin was nowhere near dying. He was using the monster's body that was between them as a pincushion at that very moment, lifting it up with his swords before kicking it up and trying to get the spear stuck inside it. He weaved about, flipping over the corpse and dancing around, trying to force Stain to back down. It was a strange dance of blades. He was forced to focus on the fight in front of himself entirely as Ronin spun like a top, switching between graceful sword strikes to hammering blows like a baseball swing, then throwing in kicks or pommel strikes, or throwing garbage at him. He even cut up the Nomu to spray blood in their faces, swinging through the entire mess. His movements were erratic, like a leaf in the breeze. It turned this way and that, stinging at him. One sword would block his spear, the other would strike at his body. It had shifted. Earlier, it was a contest of strength. Now, their agility was put to the test. Stain would dodge, then swing one end of the spear. One sword would knock it this way or that, then the other would attempt to pierce one of his gaps and he'd have to adjust, swinging another attack to parry or stepping out of the way. Ronin had snapped when they traded weapons, but now it was like the training and insanity blended into some sort of sentient blender. He couldn't get a good read on who Ronin really was, other than he was someone very, very dangerous. He learned way too quickly to be normal. How long ago had he crushed this guy? He spun his upper body, pivoting on a heel and holding both swords like they were one as wave after wave crashed into him. Joker style third form Hangman in the wind and Serene style second form the tide in waves. He stepped forward and around with every attack, slamming blow after blow into him. I suppose this combo is called the Dead Sea then. Another scream, another Nomu arrived. This Oneno, these Tolanded behind him. It was far better to fight those things, the monsters that he could recognize, than whatever the fuck was hiding under that black mask. They'd probably go for the most people, and that was to his benefit. When is hell gonna run out of you bastards? And where the fuck are the pros? He hadn't even stopped his onslaught until then, kicking Stain back and raising a great point. Where were the heroes? If he tried to bring them when he first arrived, they definitely should have arrived by now. Unless, how many of those things did Shigaraki bring? Shigaraki was behind this. Fucking knew it. Ronin snarled, cleaning his swords off on each other like a butcher. God, what a pain in my ass. Stain could read that Ronin was at least a hard worker and dedicated. He was willing to take blows for others, even if he thought he'd survive them. He didn't let the Nomu go for the paralyzed victims, even if it'd give him an easy hit for an easier kill. He let Stain do it, but if he was guessing, that's because he knew Stain's limits. If he wasn't sure of something, he wouldn't risk it if he could. It also meant, now that the situation had gotten direr, Ronin should start getting serious very soon. Now, Ronin had to break off from his advance and return to in front of the paralyzed victims, muttering. Shit, knew I should have given Kaminari better directions. He went limp, rolling his entire body before placing his right sword back on his shoulder. His left sword was in front of his body, resting on his left thigh. The stance looked relaxed, ready for the long fight he had against him. Whatever. If a hero can't turn a situation like this around, are they really a hero? Come on, let's see what we can really do. Whoosh. The rush of air came from behind Ronin, but leapt straight over him. A blue and white blur crashed into the leading Nomu, climbing on the wall, and slammed its entire body into it. The Nomu lashed out, but the blur managed to move back, bouncing on the balls of his feet. His eyes were unfocused, his hair was messy, and looked like shit. His armor was dirty, and there was still some of his own blood on his chest. Did you think I'd sit back and let someone else get my revenge? He was breathing heavily. He didn't seem fully awake right now, kept conscious only by his desire to beat Stain into the ground. I promised. And I intend to keep my promises. He was a ball of problems, but right now, if he could get focused, he could be exactly what Ronin needed. If he could rein the martyr complex in. Ingenium. We'll beat you. Tenya Iida stood, his feet under him but his head in the clouds. He wasn't the ideal backup. Ronin looked at him, nodding mostly to himself. Fantastic, glad you're up. Listen, his quirk paralyzes you if he licks your blood, so how about you take native in? Iida ran straight for the Nomu's head first, leaving Ronin pointing with his left at native. Quote. Sorry, give us a minute native. Hey jackass, at least pretend to listen. Iida was exactly the kind of hero Ronin hated too, it seemed. Headstrong, reckless, didn't listen to others, and most of all, didn't know how to do something as basic as fucking kicking. The thing his whole fighting style was based on. Would it kill him to learn some better moves than leg sweep? Ronin had to cover for Iida and help the boy out, instead of the other way around. He barely seemed to notice the Nomus that nearly fucking plastered his dumbass into the ground, leaving Ronin to chase after him and disrupt the two Nomus. Analyzing them was a mess, because from what he remembered they had multiple quirks. It seemed one could stick to walls, and both had some kind of super jump. Instead of getting to sit back and analyze though, he had to push forward to keep up with Iida. If he was on his own, he was gonna just activate slash dimension. He figured that with two swords to shove through the portals, it'd be even scarier, but at first, he had been worried about hitting the paralyzed heroes. Now he couldn't because Iida charged in like a dipshit. He snarled, spinning both blades at the wrist to get them into position before performing another thunderclap and flash mixed with Hangman in the wind. This time, he put both blades on his left side, then drew them across his body like they were one sword, creating two massive gouges in its body while throwing it forward. This wasn't the wall one, since that was too slow to be a threat to Iida and himself. Iida went straight for Stain again, a garbage decision at best. Didn't he learn shit? Stain sidestepped and began to dance with him, taking his time to quickly adjust to the spear. Ronin had to wrap these two fuckers up before they became a threat to native, Iida, or himself. The swords crossed his body, now both on his right side. He stepped to his left, bringing both swords across with him, and tore another two chunks out of the Nomu in front of him. His swords were painted red now. He flicked both of his swords at Stain. The blood splattered and hit him in the face, but more importantly, the Nomu in front of him suddenly stiffened. Hell yeah, even if Iida wasn't on his side, Stain was, even if it was unwillingly. The Nomu had slammed the ground where he was, and was stuck bent forward. Perfect for a decapitation. He activated Yamato and easily removed its head, then turned off the portal to dismember it. Head 1 came off, clean as a whistle, allowing him to get another free soccer kick in. He sidestepped around the other Nomu, who was leaping between the walls to try and crush him, then punted the first's head at Stain. He was actually getting pretty good at that move, should he make a name for it? The head took Stain off guard. The hardest part of dealing with this fake was the person he wasn't even fighting right now. He danced circles around the monsters, laughing as it crashed. The fake in front of him was practically just flailing. He was great practice for blocking and attacking since his barrage was much slower. Strange, for someone so fast, to be outpaced by a teleporter. The flying head struck him right as he was about to stop blocking and skewer the idiot before him, hitting his shoulder and throwing off the attack. His stab, meant to scrape the speedster's already wounded shoulder and get easy blood, whiff, hitting and scraping off the armor instead. He needed to hurry up. He could tell Ronin was getting more serious, with the second monstrosity already missing a leg. Ronin was picking up the pace, and he had to as well. Stain breathed in deeply, rolling his shoulder. He could see all the weak points of his prey. The veins, the chinks in the armor, the organs he could break. All he needed to do was concentrate. He forced himself to calm down even as the child rocketed toward him. As his heart rate began to slow down, he raised the spear up. It was essentially a giant knife. Best for stabbing, but could slash. He'd use that now. He could figure out Ronin's strange styles, if he thought about it. Style, the mindest form he used, like the difference between a sturdy base and the fast movements he used now. Form, the attack itself, and which number it was out of the multiple attacks in a single style. The name was based on what the attack did. Whirlpool pulled people around, Hurricane tore people up, and both spun. Following that, this would be spear style, first form, Python. The spear scraped along the ground, barely a couple of centimeters up. The fake's right leg was up, leaving his left alone on the ground. The spearhead snaked along the ground, striking the foot. It dug into the flesh, gouging its own hole while stopping the fake's momentum. He leaned forward, his leg staying place while his top moved onward. Stain moved out of the way as the boy rolled into a wall, crashing and doing more damage to himself than Stain. He raised the spearhead, licking a bit of blood off. His version wasn't very complicated. While the styles could be just a riff on heroes and their super moves, it was more likely to be an acoustic encoding or when someone paired a sound with something they needed to remember. Ronin used the attack names and the attacks to perform them without trying to remember how to. It's why he didn't shout his attack names all the time but sometimes whispered them. Iida was paralyzed again. Who'd fucking figure, rushing in like a jackass was a god-awful tactic. Ronin finished lining up his targets and stood, tall and confident, for a moment. The Nomu, who'd regenerated its leg back, leapt straight at him, not questioning the obvious bait. Ronin waited another moment to make sure its direction couldn't change before walking through his portal, teleporting 9 meters forward and about 1 meter to the side, out of the way of any Nomus, then closed the portal. The Nomu barreled towards Stain, who had to jump back to avoid it. Ronin created another portal and dragged Iida through it. Stupid kid. Do you even think? Charging a fucking supervillain. Who the fuck do you think you are, All Might? He dropped the boy, still belittling him in his heart when another needle came towards Native. A leg went between it and him, but it got stuck in the leg guard. Muttering, he pulled it out. How are you feeling, Native? Anything. Sorry. How long have you been paralyzed? I think. 5 minutes now. It was weird because Native had been hit before Iida was. How had Iida gotten up first? He didn't have time to care. He knocked the needle out of his armor and ran towards the fight. It could be said that the last Nomu was fighting Stain, but it was more accurate to say he was prolonging Stain. Stain killed this one, but he could still hear more coming. Their annoying screams, there were already 3 dead in the alley. What were the heroes doing? How many of these things were there? Stain took the spear out of the dead Nomu, unable to even twitch from the paralyzation. I'm getting tired of these distractions. So we can agree on something. Ronin ran back down the alley, jumping off one of the bodies to push himself forward, readying both swords to smash the spear to one side. Stain brought the spear down, ready to test his new move again. Sensei. Both stopped, 20 feet from each other. Ronin spared a moment to look over his shoulder. Sensei, I found you. There was a figure, who bent over, putting a hand on a wall as he caught his breath. His blonde hair hid his face until he straightened. Don't worry, your disciple is here to help. The two vigilantes looked at each other, then at Kaminari. Quote. Are you hiding the other heroes behind that wall? Nope, don't worry. It's just me. What are we doing? Fighting no moves. It would seem someone didn't know who or what the hero killer was. The two sides resurged, one spear so low it could barely be blocked since it went for such a low body part. The other twisted both of his blades around, leaving the ground. God damn it, Kaminari. Stain brought the spear up, chasing him while stepping out of the sword's range. Ronin kicked the spear with a leg, pushing himself out of the way and landing back on the ground. Stain. Quote. Huh, that's Stain. That guy. Yes. Oh. Kaminari at least looked around, noticing Native and Iida. Oh, ooh, I get it. Ronin now moved with Stain in a strange dance, each quickly entering their range for a light attack before backing out. Thank God, then go call the heroes. Heroes already on the way. Kaminari walked forward confidently, placing his left hand on his sheath as he power strat his way over. Don't worry, anyway, Kaminari smirked, flicking his hair. Fought two no moves, learned a new move, and was eager to show it off. I gotcha back, chief. Oh no, oh yeah tilde. Chapter end notes. Oh boy did this take too long to write. Yo, I'm tired, I'm here, you're reading this, you're here, let's do this. Iida right now is very hard to write for in this specific scene because he's actually useless and he doesn't listen to reason. Logically, the best thing for him to do is to decide to book it with Native. However, he doesn't do that in canon, so he won't hear either. Kinda the reason I don't like him is after this arc he doesn't do anything else, like have any major interactions or developments. So far in the anime he hasn't, anyway. Part of what I didn't like in the original is that the city is supposed to be overrun by Nomus but not one interrupts the Stain fight. It'd ruin the flow of the fight, but for me, Iida was going to do that anyway, so why not kill the pacing a little more? And, hey look, the heroes are on the way. We'll go into Kaminari's little adventure next time, and why he took so long to find Ronin again besides bad directions. This fight now has all the major players. In order, Killer Stain, Victim 1 Native, Avenger Iida, Hero Midoriya, and now late back up to Dorky in canon and Kaminari and Ronin. I tried to keep the same theme or the same general characteristics. Neither would be in the city without Midoriya, and both had their lives and heroism changed by him, usually to his detriment. He probably could have gotten a little further if he didn't throw that match at the beginning, and he would have gotten to refine his own skills even more if he wasn't teaching Kaminari. No jokes this time, cause I'm tired and I put together a model today. My fingers are killing me, but I hope you enjoyed this clusterfuck. Not my best work, but gotta go down eventually, otherwise, you leave the atmosphere and I'm not smart enough to be an astronaut. Chapter 60. Chapter summary. Stain fights, Ronin fights, Iida fails, Native exists, Nomus die, but what has Kaminari been doing this whole time? Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Kaminari watched Ronin dash off, squinting. Quote. WHAAAT. Ronin didn't come back to repeat his words though and just left him with a mostly dead Nomu to deal with. Kaminari looked around to see if anyone else was there to help him with this before stepping up and stabbing the brain a dozen or so times, with all the professionalism of a 2-year-old. Well, that one wasn't so BAEW. After a dozen pokes to make sure it was really dead, he flicked the blood off his sword and sheathed it, stylishly. Only missing the sheath entirely. But nobody saw that it took 2 tries, so it didn't count. He turned to go get the heroes. Then, something about Stain. He didn't really hear what Ronin had shouted from on top of that 10-story building. Whatever, it wasn't going to be anything Ronin could handle. He'd seen him turn Nomus to giblets with a flick of the wrist. Besides, if it was important for Kaminari to listen, Ronin would have come down from the 10-story building and repeated it face to face so Kaminari could understand. Kaminari was feeling great. He got 2 yogurts, Gatorade, and protein bars. He was bursting with energy now. Kaminari met back up with the heroes, arriving to watch Endeavor cremate one. That was pretty badass. He stood around watching for a second before his master's words came back. One of his many lectures, but one of the few on heroism. Heroism is an action term. You're only a hero when you're doing your job. That meant no lollygrasping. That didn't sound right, but he'd run with it. Kaminari began helping escort people out, working right beside normal hero and Eraserhead. I need to bring the pro heroes. Where again? He was trying to remember what Ronin told him, but he barely heard him. Did he say where? I don't think he said where. Kaminari, focus. His usual teacher scolded him, then shook his head. Where's Ronin anyway? I thought you went with him. Quote. Was that what he wanted? He said he was fighting someone. And to bring the heroes. Oh yeah, he's over there. Kaminari pointed in the direction he thought Ronin ended up going in. He was pretty sure that's where Ronin was going, and if that wasn't good enough, was anything really? Quote. Is he in danger? Kaminari laughed at the thought. Ronin, the old master man, in danger. That was like saying All Might was in danger. No way Tilda, I'll finish here, then I'll go help him. Kaminari took his stance, then ran toward Anomu. Then kept running. Was he getting any closer? Oh, no you're not. Eraserhead didn't even use the capture scarf, grabbing him by his coat. At least work with a hero, don't run off on your own. You're a hero. Follow me Tilda. Kaminari turned back around and began his victorious charge towards glory, fame, and killing, slowly dragging his homeroom teacher along. Quote. Fine. Wahoo. Come on, this'll be a blast. Now they both ran into the havoc, Kaminari smiling like Christmas as his feet struck the ground, pouncing towards the nearest bad guy. Kaminari really got to refine his thunderclap and flash with practice. What had started as a movement that could barely hit anyone became his go-to attack, slamming into his opponents with enough force to literally tear them apart. The sword's blunt edge ensured he wasn't dismembering anyone like a fruit ninja, but he was breaking bones with almost every shot. He barely used his actual quirk, and only used it after he slammed into them, forcing their guard down with his sword. When he was that close, he practically couldn't miss. He made this tackle attack with his last defeat in mind. He lost in the first round of the sports festival, and lost while still conscious. Sort of. If he had managed to get around the vines, he would have had Iida, who had only close-range attacks, in the bag. He now realized the brilliance of his teacher. The rebel was a playground now, much easier to negotiate than the trash heaps he used to run across. By teaching him in rough terrain, this felt easy as walking. Thunderclap and Flash wasn't just an attack, it was a form of movement. A Nomu stopped flying suddenly and was wrapped in cloth, plummeting and flailing. Kaminari dashed behind it as it fell, avoiding a swing, then turned his entire body 180 for that sweet spinning cut. The cut dug into the body, severing most of the neck and forcing it to bleed out rapidly, but it wasn't done yet. Another flailing limb forced him back. Instead of resetting his sword, he brought it up and over his head. Then accidentally made his new move. After killing that Nomu, and trying out his move to make sure it was as cool as he thought it was, he said later to the heroes and told them the direction go before heading off himself. Listening for the fight made it so much easier, he must have wasted a whole minute ducking his head around everywhere before he heard the sounds of fighting and rode the train all the way to his master, who danced circles around a cool dude with a ton of bandanas. Then, after a brief exchange of words, he charged forward, ready and eager to help his boss. He would have carried the two guys away, but he didn't have the muscle, and it looked easier to beat that guy. Ronin watched, horrified, as Kaminari casually walked forward, nodding his head to a beat only he could hear. No guard, his hand on his sword, and his right swinging freely, not even trying to grab his sword. Kaminari, watch out. Kaminari then began his dash, pumping his one free arm to build up momentum before grabbing his sword at the last second. Thunderclap tilde, and tilde. He swung his entire body at Stain, putting everything into a single slash. Flash tilde. Predictably, Stain had learned to pull back the spear, but instead of being able to push back forward, he now had to adjust back again as two swords swung, one at his leg and one at his arm, one under his spear while the other ran over. He moved backward, but Kaminari just kept advancing. And my new attack, Thunderclap and tilde. He pushed his sword completely over his head with one hand, stepping forward with his left and re-entering the range threatened by the spear. Stain took this moment to thrust, since Kaminari's guard was completely off, stabbing at his main body. And getting hit off course by Kaminari's free arm. Kaminari had his left arm entirely free still since he was one-handing the sword. That arm backhanded the spear to one side, right as he stepped in. The sword came down, and Stain couldn't exactly back away since Kaminari was on the same side of the spear as him. Ronin was on the opposite side of the spear from Stain, meaning if they both grabbed the spear side closest to them, they'd face each other. Kaminari was on the same side, so if he and Stain grabbed the closest side, they'd be shoulder to shoulder. This meant Stain overextended, and the spear couldn't attack because Kaminari was too close. Bolt. With Stain overextended, the only thing he could do was step back. And give Kaminari more room to build up speed. They seemed to move tandem, one pressing forward in perfect sync with the other. The sword came down, slamming into the lead shoulder, and making it audibly crack. Stain grunted in pain as his lead arm went stiff. He couldn't move quickly anymore and turned just in time to make eye contact with him. Ronin. After all that, the first solid hit goes to my apprentice. So this is what pride feels like. He put both swords on the same side, his left, and took a step back. I believe it's my turn to show you a modified thunderclap then. Stain forced the spear as high as he could go. Thunder breathing, modified first form. Thunderclap and cyclone. Stain jumped back but was rushed past on his right side. Ronin moved straight past him, meaning instead of moving away from Ronin he was now moving towards no. Stain tried to stop his own jump, but he was midair and hurtling back first towards Ronin, defenseless. They both faced opposite directions, but as Ronin crossed his legs, his entire body began to spin. His feet shifted, his hips adjusted, his shoulders rotated, and both arms extended as both swords slammed into his body sideways, taking the air out of him and sending him forward, defenseless. The world seemed to spin as he fell, straight towards Ronin's pupil. He tried to catch himself with his spear, but instead took another sword to the face. Ronin's pupil had performed another drawing slash, clubbing him back towards Ronin. Bam. Two swords hit him forward again, making him stumble. He had to get a solid grip or else bam. The pupil brought the sword down on his head, making him kneel. Bam. Making him go face first into the ground. Bam. Forcing him lower and lower. Bam. Crushing him. Bam. 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 After 10 hits with the blunt weapons, the murderer finally went down. It was strange, after such a strong build-up, the fight ended in a very aggressive game of ping-pong. He was tied up with Ronin's coat, since for some reason, not one person managed to have actual handcuffs. God, you two were useless. Ronin shook his head as he checked Stain for weapons again, then as subtly as a car explosion put Stain's old sword on his belt. What the fuck were you thinking? He pointed at Iida, furious. I'm sorry sir, I wasn't. You're goddamn right you weren't. Ronin finished sorting the weapons, shaking his head. He'd taken the kanabo out of the jacket so there was as little as possible in it. He was just wearing his baggy pants, boots, gauntlets, and bodysuit. Felt a little chilly. I don't have any real problems with you, native. Just pissed in general. Wow, he really went down easily. Kaminari made it look easy, but it was far from the truth. Stain had already gotten beaten and battered, but Kaminari had tilted the battle in his favor. He gave Ronin the opportunity he needed to win by forcing Stain to spread his guard too thin. From the moment Kaminari didn't get skewered, Ronin won. The problem had been ensuring Kaminari didn't die in that first exchange, but he managed to pull his own weight a little bit by aiming for the spear. Stain would have won if they exchanged body blows, but attacking the weapon forced him to try and avoid it. Even if Kaminari didn't realize it, he was only alive because he hit that weapon instead of the body. You shouldn't have been so reckless, Kaminari, but I'm not sure I can blame you. I thought you didn't have it in you, but you surprised me. Ronin kicked up Gnir, checking it for damages. It seems you have some tactics in you yet. With all due respect, sir, Iida spoke up again, still ashamed. Might I know the difference between myself and Kaminari? I need to know to improve myself further. The difference between you two? That is a good question, actually. He stretched his back, thinking it over. He aided his superior and followed his lead, instead of charging ahead. He tried to understand the scene. But most of all, he succeeded. Sometimes, the only way you can tell who had the better plan is to set them both loose and see what happens. God, he was hungry. He barely thought about what he was speaking, so he only hoped it wasn't complete garbage. Whatever plan works is the better plan. If you managed to pull yours off, it would have been fine. But you didn't, so it wasn't. That's how vigilantes think, anyway. He dusted himself off again, and despite not being able to see his eyes, they could tell he was now staring him down. I'm not sure you could ever handle being a vigilante. The strong thrive, and the weak die. Heroes get cushy jobs, don't have to risk as much. But without the risk, weakness is allowed. Most heroes survive their first year. The only vigilantes who survive 1 year of full work are the best of the best. The heroes were arriving now, slow as fuck though. It seemed they had finally finished most of the nomus. Ronin adjusted his guns, shaking his head. Your teachers will have strong words for you. Your family too, but if you learn from this, you might actually improve a little. He was calm now, sitting down to let Native do most of the talking to the heroes. You can control your emotions, or your emotions control you. One gives you focus, the other gives power. They're not entirely disconnected. He closed his eyes, content to relax for a second as they went to grab Stain. And something screamed. Another Nomu. It came from deeper down the alley. Ronin's eyes came open as he had thoughts, a little too late, from reviewing his fighting style. The entire fight, I decapitated every Nomu to make sure they were dead, but I was the only one to jump on top of the Nomus. I thought Stain killed his, but what if he instead? The third Nomu didn't even stand up properly when the paralyzation wore off, charging straight at the heroes. They were in disarray, they were slow, they weren't prepared for the attack, but one person was. Stain slipped out of the jacket, grabbing a sword and spear from a vigilante, and hopped atop the rushing Nomu, using his spear to actually defend the few hasty attacks that almost hit it. The Nomu jumped straight past everyone, leaping onto the buildings in the distance and hopping away. Quote. That motherfucker just stole my jacket and my spear. Kaminari was mostly uninjured except for the injuries he made himself. He was the happiest one in the jet, and he was excited. I didn't even use my quirk to beat Stain. I can't wait to tell everyone I beat Stain. Ronin leaned back with his weapons laid across his lap, held in place by his hands so they wouldn't slide off. While it might be good for public morale to know that the hero killer was beaten, I doubt either of us will get credit. That will probably be given to miscellaneous heroes in the area, who will never be named. Nezu nodded along. You'll be debriefed, Kaminari, while Mr. Ronin will just be sent home. He already seems to know what is going to happen. Hey, you have great muscles. Why wear that stupid coat when you could show these off? Midnight was poking his shoulder, which was quite sore from training with the spear he no longer had, that fucking asshat, and spoke with a smile. Just stitch the helmet, and show some skin, not like you have minimum clothing requirements. He couldn't tell if she was trying to flirt or get him to show off his identity, but he wasn't having it either way. No way in hell was he going to look like the rest of these idiots who wouldn't know a proper defense if they faceplanted and did. This mask was clearly the main thing stopping her from using her quirk and drugging him, and he still didn't trust her enough to take it off. If I recall, you're the reason they had to make those requirements. He stared out, trying not to scream as she kept touching his arms. Swinging those swords had hurt them more than he had thought, it seemed. Kaminari, what did you think of your first delve into heroism? As unfulfilling as you thought it'd be. It was way cooler. Kaminari smiled wide, thinking it over. I got to see your super moves and make my own. The way you slashed everything, then how fast you went. You have your own super moves. Hey, wanna show each other our secret techniques? How the fuck did this woman teach children? You should be well rested for tomorrow, Kaminari. He just kept on ignoring Midnight, hoping she'd wear herself out eventually. Your body should need a lot of sleep for all the moves you did today. Tomorrow we were going to go over more quirk usage, but I think I'll edit the schedule. Nezu nodded vigorously. Fantastic, if you need anything, please let us know. Like if you have a location you want to be dropped off at. Ronin stood up, putting on his weaponry, then unsheathing Yamato. Quote. Yeah, right here is fine. He slashed downward, falling through the bottom of the jet and extinguishing the first portal. He then flipped his sword to reverse grip, teleporting himself upside down to reverse his gravity and losing all falling momentum until he landed on a building, landing about as safely as he could get. Back in the jet, everyone stared at the spot Ronin fell through. Quote. Dude. Kaminari smiled as wide as he could, amazed. Quote. He's so cool. The teachers had to hold an impromptu meeting, calling everyone back to UA. This was a very important issue that they had to deal with, right now. The league is getting more and more active. We need to do something about them soon, or else this could quickly spiral out of control. It was obvious, but they had no clear leads. I'm worried about the amount of Nomus this time. After all, that amount of Nomus was crazy compared to last time. How many of these things can they make? President Mike voiced his concerns, and he didn't know how worrying they truly were. All for One had hundreds of years, and possibly millions of quirks. He always kept them reserved until now though. He was creating Nomus left and right. However, not even Recovery Girl knew the full truth of All for One. Only Nezu and Toshinori did. It's insane. Is it a quirk that forces people to mutate? Oh, that's creepy. Midnight shuddered, the closest of all, even if unknowingly. They went back and forth for a while before Watchdog spoke up. Should Ronin be allowed on campuses? This is a difficult time, and it could be rough on security. No one pointed out his accidental bark as Nezu thought it over. He barely spared a thought until now, but it did pull the vigilante into focus. They knew now his real threat level, at least part of it. They'd learn more when they got Native's report, but everyone who attended in person saw him obliterate 5 Nomus without even touching them. His physical abilities were insane too. Just from watching him practice, he seemed to be able to go for hours without stopping. His endurance was amazing, although, that could just be up to his own talents. After all, he didn't drink either, and just using energy couldn't replace that. If anything, his ability to go without water would imply a lot of training, and it was just his natural endurance. Nezu blinked, a stray thought forming. Quote. Has anyone ever heard any reports of Ronin using his teleportation without his sword? Everyone shook their head, confused, but they soon returned to his thoughts. But Nezu had thoughts. He mumbled quietly, so no one could hear him. Ronin had air guns that rely on technology, but were strong enough to blow enhanced bodies apart. In addition, he only teleports with his sword. Like it's the sword that has AAND, he never lets anyone look at his equipment, despite us offering to design it. The extreme martial arts. His incredible endurance. Why he's putting off quirk training, and the only training he could offer was extremely basic. Why he's so confident that even Kaminari can learn his martial arts. Why he mostly used weapons to fight. He already admitted that he used technology to make his guns, and it made sense because it had nothing to do with his stated main quirk. Spinning air didn't just take energy. Plus, his jacket and bodysuit clearly weren't made of normal materials. It had a metallic shine, implying that it was some kind of bendable metal. Like one from a quirk. A quirk that could not be in any way, shape, or form an energy quirk. Since he had 3 pieces of equipment made to replicate or created from quirks, it could stand to reason his last trick, his sword, followed the rest. But the trick he'd shown with his handies gauntlets. He wore very complicated-looking boots and gauntlets. How much of his uniform was just highly advanced technology? Nezu stared into the sky as if he was finally meeting God as the puzzle began to click. Ronin's guns were made from advanced technology, so it was likely his jacket, bodysuit, and sword were as well, since otherwise there was a series of unrelated people helping him, going against Ronin's anti-help regiment. And if all his technology was providing what they thought was his quirk, they didn't know what his real quirk was. But he could guess. Body enhancement is the logical guess, but it wouldn't explain why he looks so normal in his endurance. Transformation and emitter take energy and has a set time limit, while he has no limit and no visible effect, and his body looks humanoid, meaning he most likely didn't have a mutation quirk either. Midnight poked the open-mouthed, glassy-eyed principal. Quote. Sir, do you have any opinions on? Are you alive, sir? And if he didn't have any of those quirks? With his amazing endurance, known track record of training like a maniac, shown results of improving quickly, advanced intelligence in gathering and using information, that meant he was. I think he's all fine, just in the middle of one of his tangents. Recovery girl got off her stool from checking his eyes with a light. You better go on without him, no telling when he wakes. Nezu stood from his chair, clutching his head in both hands, screaming at the top of his lungs, oh. My G-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-O. Chapter end notes. After the hiatus, how's that for a note to come back on? Yo yiggity yo, what's poppin', I'm hyped on caffeine, let's get this over with before I crash. Anticlimactic end. Little bit, but you get surrounded by 2 guys armed with baseball bats, take 12 hits to the head, and we'll see whose ending is anticlimactic. It's still this one, I'm sorry. I just don't like overly dramatic endings. I hope you enjoyed Stain's failsafe. If he won, he wasn't going to kill the Nomu either, since it attacked heroes and furthered his goal. The moment he killed, the Nomu was deliberately not from his paw for this scene. For anyone who doesn't understand what happened, instead of killing the Nomu, he just paralyzed it with blood curdle and turned it into a time bomb, since Ronin had a habit of standing atop the Nomus. When Ronin stood atop this one though, it would stand up, and hopefully, the momentary break would let Stain kill the heroes and run, although it ended up being much more useful to the vigilante. Also, sweet, free stuff. Yes, Kaminari's super move is literally just violence. Ronin's first super move. Am I funny? Is my circle metaphor fun? Do you enjoy my dumb humor about making everything connect? It's all a circle, meaning my jokes will one day come back to club me in the back of the head, killing me for making such god-awful jokes. I have no one to blame but myself. I hope I put enough threads for the connection to be reasonable. I thought for a guy with super intelligence, it was about time for him to notice something was up. The problem with writing super intelligent characters is you usually have to be at least intelligent or have access to intelligent people to help you. I am not even average intelligence, so I try to Google the smart things in advance, but this is just about making sure there are enough breadcrumbs to make it all connect. The guns being just tools was hinted at when Ronin came in for the training with Class 1A. Ronin's endurance is amazing because if he does have one, he can use it non-stop for at least several hours without break, which following Nezu's theory that he's a high schooler, is impossible since no child would have enough hours in the day to increase their quirk use that high and still attend school. Most heroes get worn out from using their quirks a lot, but Ronin seemed to lack that cooldown period, also demonstrated in the training with Class 1A when he never required a single break, and could use his quirk as effectively when he started as when he ended. The sports festival shows us that just quick bouts still force the students to need breaks, as students can't fight back-to-back matches. For the reveal, it was in summary hinted at by his lack of limitations when using his weaponry, him only using his quirk through his weaponry, and the fact that one of his weapons that was believed to be a quirk of some sort he had said was not and instead said it was advanced technology, since the weapon in question seemed to not require any energy to use on Ronin's part. Welp, that's it. Next time, on Dragon Ball Z Kai Omega Ruby. More dumb jokes. More everything's connected. More changes to the plot. And I might finally put all for one back into this fanfic. Adios. Rip King Nurin jacket, you were named and loved. Except the jacket. No one cared about that jacket except Ronin himself. The jacket can die in a fire. Chapter 61, Ken. Chapter summary. Guess who just beat Stain with his apprentice? Guess who just saved Ida native? Guess who just got robbed like a chump by a guy he already beat? This guy. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya threw the mask off his face, screaming. God damn it. His leg already hurt from fucking up his landing, his jacket and over 100 of his needles were gone, and his prototype spear was fucking stolen. Oh, and to top it all off, he was going to be late. He slumped down on top that random rooftop, giving his legs a rest while he rubbed the tiredness from his eyes. God. Fucking. Damn it. He sat on that roof for a while, leaning against a radiator with a sore head, a sore throat, and a really sore leg, really taking a chance to wallow in how sorry he felt for himself before he rubbed his face, took a deep breath, and pushed off that radiator to get back on his feet before he switched outfits. Midoriya put his vigilante outfit into his duffel bag or what was left of it. Last time he ever uses his shit to tie someone up, should have just used some of Stain's own headbands since the motherfucker had so many. Bitch. Midoriya walked home, rubbing his leg, and got grabbed on his way home. I kid, didn't anyone tell you this place isn't a safe place to walk alone? Knife-like fingers were at his throat. 3 of them, and he didn't have anything. Usually, he hid his spear inside his backpack, but... Money or your life, chump, he didn't even hesitate, taking the wallet out and throwing it into the air. Quote. Catch. The eyes went up and the grip loosened as his hand snaked forward, pushing the knife fingers to one side while he jumped forward, slamming the crown of his skull into the man's nose. The man attempted to move backward from the blow, but the man's leg snaked out, tripping him. He fell backward roughly, and received a stomp to the stomach, driving the air out of him. The next approached. His body glowed, but the backpack loop caught one of his arms and was used to flip him. The arm was pulled down, the leg on the same side was kicked out, and he went airborne. He flew into the air, crashing into the first man, knocking the air out of him again. The man approached the final one, who was shaking. Come. His voice was oddly confident, and he seemed oddly tall for someone so short. His presence crushed his surroundings. His eyes stared straight through the man, undeterred. The final mugger took his words, charging with a knife in hand. The man didn't even use a weapon to dispatch him. He arrived late and immediately told his mom his excuse of having landed on his leg wrong, and so he couldn't get back in time. Technically true, to boot. He didn't delay anything and set to straighten out what happened immediately instead of dancing around it, while not actually telling the whole truth. After making sure she understood what happened and calming down any worries, he got to bed. He barely remembered anything after landing, he was so tired and hungry. He barely did his stretches at first but got into more as it made his leg feel great, then fell asleep meditating instead of his bed, sprawled out on the floor. He didn't even notice the gap in his memories, only remembering his dream. There were more figures now. The old one still stood center. His hair flowed in a wind Midoriya couldn't feel, and he stood so tall he was like a mountain. The wide stance, hands on hips, the ground around him littered with weapons. Spears and swords pierced the ground in rows as common as if they were grass, hammers and axes cleaved into the ground, armor and shields shattered in his presence. The man never looked back at the wreckage but kept on smiling confidently, staring forward. To his left, a beast in human form. Its posture was forward, hands flexed like talons. Its body slowly shifted with a heavy breathing, filling the air with a low snarl. Its only weapons were a massive club tied to its back, and the wrapped hands and feet. It didn't wear shoes, but a pair of baggy pants that ended above the ankles. Its face was covered by messy hair, its entire body trembling as it prepared to pounce on some unseen creature. To his right, a wiry man playing with knives. His hair was forced down at the front, then flared out at the back, uncontrollable. He wore a mask to hide his face as he tossed a knife over and over, the most kinetic of the three men. Knives adorned almost every inch of his three-piece suit. They were long and narrow at his belt, sticking out of the legs of his boots, thin where they held his hair, but they were everywhere. Not a single figure looked at him. It was completely quiet except for the snarl of the left, and the sound of the glove hitting the knife to his right. He didn't try to make sense of it, because it was only a dream. Dreams never made sense. Right now, he had something more important to do. Create a new spear and find out what weapon beat the spear. As he researched and meditated, he found. Not much actually. No one really gave a good response to what weapon would counter the spear. Some people said sword, but he just proved last night that those people were bullshit if the spearmen knew what they were doing. It seemed for a more common response having two things, such as having a second weapon or shield, helped by one deflecting the spear and the other attacking the spearman. So he could either master fighting with two swords, get a shield, or learn a new weapon. He did have one that looked pretty good to him, a new weapon for his arsenal. A better spear. Midoriya decided it was time to make a weapon for the old man. He left school, picking up the request from the golf course. Quote. A book. It included wood made from kamui so it was considered a body part and leather. The big man even included thread for him, although he'd have to make the paper himself. There were a few more pieces like metal for decoration, 2 gems probably from that bear that Kurogiri bragged about, and instructions for a second item, a ring. All for one wanted the activation piece to be inside the ring, and not the book, since that might set the book on fire. Reasonable, although he wasn't sure why he was picking such weird items. Wasn't his problem. Learning how to make a book, though, was. And how to set a battery into something so small. He looked around the room. It was best to get these over with, then develop his OWNNO. The best order would be to start with the book, then to use his new spear to practice making as small wiring as possible, then finish with the ring. Midoriya made his way back to the club, looking up how to make paper first. He even specified how many pages he wanted, over 400. That meant over 200 sheets, folded in half to form the pages. He needed to learn to form the paper before he could even think much about the book, but he still needed a little thought. This book was to be massive, practically an entire set of dictionaries in one. 2 feet tall, a foot and a half wide, and roughly half a foot thick. Regular paper would have been big enough. It'd practically be a weapon in its own right when it was finished. Midoriya began to work on the paper by working the wood. First, he had to remove the bark, a weird sensation of basically desiccating kamui woods. Didn't think about it. Just focus. Focus, and only focus on the work. He boiled the wood to soften it all up, then cut off the ski bark. Just bark, not like skin in any way, shape, or form. After that, he could start adding more chemicals to make the wood softer and softer until he could tear it apart. He tore it apart with hands and pliers, then boiled the result to soften it up even more. Then he took a blender from the cooking club, who didn't seem to ever actually cook, and used that and some water to pulverize the wood. He then would remove the water, then start pulverizing the wood pulp again. And again, until it was finally fine enough for him. The pulp wasn't like sand, since it was a wet mess that was small clumps instead of individual grains. He spread the pulp out in portions, bleaching it then letting it sit for an hour while he made more pulp. When he finished letting it sit, he poured the bleach out, reblended it, then added more bleach. Slowly, through representative after rep, the wood became white. After all that paperwork, it was time to pack up. Midoriya got to practice with his new swords, working on and adjusting his 2-sword stance until he was comfortable with where it ended up, then packed up the shop for tomorrow, shipping out with his weapons in tow. Your time has improved again, Kaminari. The test was simple, but it required a lot of concentration. Kaminari could now move across the room at a normal pace while generating lighting from his waist down. Nezu ate some nuts as he watched. Indeed, it's amazing how simple the exercise is, but how great the improvement is. This seems like something a beginner would do. Indeed, it's so easy it makes me wonder why UA doesn't do it, Ronin spoke, staring down Nezu. He could feel the threat, not because Ronin thought anyone knew about his secret, but because he clearly didn't like that UA wasn't teaching as effectively as possible. After all, Ronin was teaching basic quirk management in a safe environment, something Kaminari probably wouldn't have had growing up when the elementary schools taught basic quirk use. They were on a budget after all, and Kaminari's quirk could seriously damage electrical equipment. Alright Kaminari, time to up the difficulty. Ronin grabbed another Gatorade and tossed it to him. Take 5 and we'll get into it. Ronin wore the same thing as last time. The bodysuit outlined his body but hid the scars he was sure were underneath. Nezu had interviewed Kaminari and Iida for their versions of the event already. Ronin was constantly training himself, adjusting to his new sword. He seemed better with it than Nezu would have thought someone who just picked it up would be. Ronin most likely had a martial arts background, but the sheer variety of weapons he could use made it impossible to guess what he practiced originally. Alrighty, what's next? Kaminari bounced from foot to foot. Ronin hadn't once paired Kaminari's quirk with his current attacking style, and if it weren't for getting used to having it at his hip, probably wouldn't even have Kaminari wear his sword right now. Ronin took the empty Gatorade bottle, placing it on the floor. Kick that all the way across the room and back. You still aren't allowed to move if you're not generating electricity. Get going. Kaminari began his trek, immediately kicking it off to one side and being forced to chase it down. Nezu watched him go, then turned back to Ronin, who moved quickly to attack in quick succession. Even against a phantom opponent, his body weaved around, cutting the air with what seemed practice ease. It wasn't until he took a break that you could see the slight tremble in his muscles, sitting down and performing breathing exercises. You know, you're quite a physically strong person. Nezu started fishing again, trying to get even one bite out of Ronin. And you're good at teaching. We don't have a physical education teacher here. What would you think? About taking away from their time with All Might? I think not. Ronin led with the students in mind instead of a personal problem. He's the #1 hero in Japan, and the students should get to learn from him. He should be an excellent teacher on heroism, with no equal given his position. He should be, but he wasn't. Just teach a class or something. Take the bait, be an assistant for a day. At least mention the fact that you're a vigilante and we're heroes. Besides, a vigilante has no right to teach heroes. Our codes are too different. You're out there trying to look good, I'm out there trying to save people. If they were more similar, you'd focus on teaching them how to properly use their quirks for combat instead of letting them come up with methods on their own, or spending time picking fancy names. Are you saying you shouldn't be teaching Kaminari? You're doing, yes, I should not. Huh. You weren't around in the age of vigilantism, I can tell. When the strong and lucky lived, and the weak and unlucky were just another line of text on the 5 o'clock news. Ronin seemed to stare forever as he sat. Vigilantes don't teach each other. Each have their own methods and secrets, but most of the time, those secrets died with them. The tales and techniques of men and women trying to change the world for the better, lost to time. He took off his gun holster, placing both guns behind him. He worked to undo his gauntlets, his eyes still staring at something beyond. Those days are done though. Heroism isn't about changing the world, it's about changing your bank numbers. It might have been about doing good once, but I doubt a single student in your class actually became a hero because they wanted to help others. My outdated ideology will just slow down these new heroes. He removed his gauntlets, undoing the top of his bodysuit. Only now, this close, could he see the mess of scars in such fine detail. Chemical burns, regular burns, cuts, bullet wounds, and tears, all healed or healing, decorated his body. All I can teach Kaminari is how to fight, not how to save. You can't teach someone who doesn't want to learn, after all. I do not want my legacy to be the scars I inflicted, but the ones I prevented. I dream of the day, someday, when the world no longer needs me. Someday, I will be hunted down. Someday, I will be another line of text on the 5 o'clock news. He stretched, showing that the bodysuit hid muscles more than it showed them. No tattoos, just scars. Some of them looked old, but his analytical eye determined the body beneath the scars was young. Little body hair on what wasn't burned, and possibly still growing. Doing the math, that meant Ronin started his collection of scars from a young age. It wasn't a pleasant thing to look at for Nezu. It wasn't great for most heroes to have this many injuries, but he hated to see children who had gone down the wrong path. If his math was true, it was obvious why Ronin had become a vigilante. When no hero would save him, he rose up and saved himself. The fact that he never seemed to kill, with his hypothetical background, was amazing. Ronin finished stretching, going back to working out. He was also showing that, true to the theory, his body showed no signs of a mutation quirk. If there were any signs they were only on his head, and that would have been one of the easiest to identify him by. There was very little chance of getting him to remove his mask and show that. Ahem. Nezu wasn't quite sure what to say. Most people didn't insult heroes so much to his face, but it seemed Ronin had more reasons to than most people. He sat back, watching Kaminari move back and forth across the room. No, wait, he kicked the bottle into a corner and was still on his first go. Have you considered getting a hero license? Ronin nearly lost his stance, snorting. Which one? The one that doesn't even last a year, requires my legal name, and would force me to start following your rules. Hero licenses came in 3 flavors, so to speak. The provisional, the national, and the international. Provisional was more like a driving permit than a driving license, for a metaphor. Still needed a hero with their national license at least, and only lasted 1 year. Ronin was acting like he already had one, and Nezu had no doubt he could pass the test, but it was a bunch of rules that'd chain him down. You're quite a hard customer to please. Then don't consider me a customer, your life will be easier for it. Nezu looked over the vigilante with one eye, and the boy with the other. Ronin was a great hero, there could be no doubt. He didn't have the legal title, and perhaps that's what made his heroism so pronounced. The people didn't even know of the vigilante who he'd seen go for a patrol every night, who'd take on armed men and brave the world on his own, but he still went out. But beyond that, there was a boy. A boy he believed to be in high school, as young as the one he taught, who'd suffered hell for a condition the world labeled him with. His body was a testament to both the heroism he was capable of and the trials he survived. For someone who tried to help children for a living, it tore him apart. He wanted to offer his help to the one everyone else was suspicious of because he still remembered days from long ago. Days in a cold laboratory, where no hero rescued him, but a vigilante, his arm blown clean off and laughing as he took on hundreds of men at once. That vigilante had saved his life, but to the rest of the world, he was just another name on the 5 o'clock news. Then you're quite a hard friend to please. Nezu kept on smiling, and Ronin didn't refute it. You wouldn't be interested in joining UA, you wouldn't want to become a professional hero, you already expect to die from your job. If you want to do something for me, Ronin said between slashes, teach this generation the risks of heroism. Let them know that we're all going to die the same way, but they get a better funeral. Somebody seemed hooked on keeping this as depressing as possible, which was impressive with how cheery his apprentice was. Hey guys, did you see? I finally did it. I'm coming back now AW shit. Kaminari went off in a new direction while Ronin weaved the blades around. Just move on, Nezu. I'm just another passing fad. You're only interested in me because I rely on martial arts anyway. You speak so confidently for someone so wrong. It was refreshing to see someone who didn't hide his contempt, who didn't try to keep up. The honesty was like a breath of fresh air, even if the words made the air cold. He drank his tea again, then looked at Kaminari. He looks up to you, you know. He's not even aware you're a vigilante. He's what? Don't worry, I'll sort that out. Hey Kaminari, he bounced the teacup off Ronin's head. I wasn't finished. You're doing great Kaminari. How long ago had he just seen Kaminari as the dumbest student in 1A? He always knew Kaminari could be a hero, but he didn't think the young man ever be capable of such feats of mobility or able to remember so much. Kaminari could remember almost anything Ronin ever said to him, possibly because Ronin bent his teaching style to Kaminari's style. It was a little obvious he didn't use repetition so much when he practiced for himself. You are very different from the heroes of today, a completely different species. Instead of a breed, even could you hand me that teacup, thank you. Nezu refilled his cup, then watched Kaminari dash quickly while maintaining his quirk. Such quick movements he would have thought beyond the young man just a week ago. You changed his life entirely. If you could even teach just 10 students, you might replace the entire top 10 heroes in Japan. You underestimate All Might. He spoke this time with confidence, his head bobbing a moment down and to the left, seemingly unaware of the hero's quickly fading time. And the other students in your school. But most of all, you underestimate Kaminari. His confidence doubled in his words at the boy's name. I only showed him a stupid move from an anime. He turned that stupid move, though, into a real attack. I taught nothing, what you see is the result of his work. Exactly. But with your guidance, he could use it. Nezu leaned forward, smiling with a wide grin. You showed me his real potential. You showed him. You didn't just teach him how to do some stupid move from an anime, wait, what? Ahem. You showed him that he was capable of so much greater ways he could use his quirk. The room he still had to grow. You might not want to be a professional hero, but you could be the greatest hero course teacher in the world. Ronin stopped again, having been doing a single chain of attacks the entire time. He worked his shoulders, but Nezu could tell he was listening. Quote. You're fishing for something. What? He was getting more obvious with age, he was sure of it. Oh well. I want you. Your teaching methods, your weapons, your possible quirk. He wiggled his eyebrows at that, but no reaction. You show people their full potential. I want to see yours. Want all you want, but... He paused, showing a slight twitch. Statistically, he was thinking about something by how his head moved to the left and down. When thinking, left and down generally was recalling sights and sounds, so a moment in time. This was a memory of something he experienced. Quote. A hero, one of the only ones I respect, told me that it was fine to dream but I had to be realistic. So do you. Something deeper was going on. And he didn't know what. And Nezu hated not knowing things. He could, with enough context, work something out. He had done the same motion when he talked about All Might, exactly, the angle was precisely the same. Nezu's memory was sharper than Ronin's katanas, and he could never forget something he saw so recently. That would mean All Might told Ronin, probably civilian Ronin, that it was fine to dream, but he needed to be realistic. It seems to be a bad memory for him, so it wasn't anything good. He'd need to get with All Might to discuss further information. He knew coming to supervise this was worth the time, and every second was gold. This was more information than he'd gotten when scouring records over and over. He'd be checking in quickly with his teachers, mostly All Might, to see if they could help him get all the information about this vigilante anomaly. Also, if you're changing your ways, could you change the temperature in here? I'm already sweltering, and I think Kaminari is baking. Ronin brought him back into the real world, pointing a sword at the nearly naked Kaminari. Shirt, shoes, and socks had all been ditched. His pants were rolled up to his thighs, and he was still sweating buckets. Don't worry guys. Almost there. Give me a second. Nezu nodded, pulling out his phone and changing it. He was the one who raised it after all, in an attempt to get the bodysuit off. If Ronin didn't want to remove his helmet to drink water, he'd have to cool down somehow, and he had chosen to remove his upper layer. Ronin still wasn't letting him get to his equipment, though, so he couldn't test out the theory about all electronic equipment. Did you want to eat a meal here? I can have lunch rush, make some extra for tomorrow. Ronin thought it over, then nodded. Quote. Pork chops would be lovely if you could. Nezu smiled and nodded along. Guys, I did it. Kaminari threw his arms up in victory and took a Gatorade to the forehead. Congrats, Kaminari. You're doing excellent work. Kaminari picked the cool drink up, pressing it to his head for a minute before drinking. Your coordination is coming along nicely, and your concentration has improved by leaps and bounds. Nezu didn't listen to everything Ronin said, but more watching the overall experience. The compliments, the slight adjustments, the energy he imparted into his protege. Ronin clearly adjusted his style depending on what he was doing, in fighting and in teaching. The mostly negative tone, the dark memories, all the things he spoke of with Nezu was gone. Kaminari looked ecstatic at his mentor's words, nodding along. Ronin gave him a slap on the back and sent him back on his way. Nezu smiled, then bade the superb hero and the young man in training farewell. Midoriya was pretty sure it got to 90 degrees in that room. Might have something to do with Kaminari using lightning the whole time, might have something to do with Nezu there. That guy was really pushy, but he couldn't work at UA legally. He was too young. Would be kind of funny though. Midoriya at least got his own dinner, finally. He walked with his favorite costume onto the bar, smiling as he greeted the men older than him as young men. They even thanked him for it. He was mostly alone as he sat down on the bar side. Maruko had been sent to Hosu for cleanup duty, according to the Hero News. Long day, Mr. Ken. The bartender made sure he'd never forget the name he chose, at least. Long week. Took an apprentice, and I seem to have forgotten how much work it takes. He laughed, mixing a bit of the truth in. Actually, that was all true. He really had forgotten how much work it took starting out. The sore muscles, the self-reflection, the effort, the exhaustion. Even as he taught it, he relieved it. He rubbed his shoulder at the thought. I even lost something important, but I think I should stop rambling, for the sake of your ears and my stomach. He put on a big smile, then checked the menu like he didn't know what he was going to order. The girl was looking for you. Sozu, the bartender, nodded to the empty seat to his right. Told me to give her a call next time you showed up, thought I should give you a heads up in case, hey, anything comes of it. He shook his head at that coy smile. At my age, you must be quite the romantic. For the flattery, I'll do something expensive today. Steak and ribs, medium rare, fries, and soup. He hadn't eaten lunch, and he was still starving from his lack of dinner last night. A light breakfast and snacks kept him going all day. He was clearly quite hungry. Besides, it's pointless to call her. She's in Hosu, right? Bam. Old man, was in the area. Fancy seeing you here. Midoriya blinked, immediately checking his phone to make sure his info was good. Yep, she was supposed to be there all day. Was this an ambush? Had they set him up? Nezu poking him with questions and not giving him a chance to eat 2 days in a row so he'd be extremely weak. He couldn't fight right now. Many a question raced through his head, but foremost of all, what was Maruko doing here? Sue Maruko might have been stalking out a dude twice her age, and trying to stay in Musudafu as much as possible. Anytime she could, she stayed within 10 minutes of the place, and with her speed, 10 minutes for most people was about 6 hops across the rooftops. So she might have arrived a second after him and plastered herself listening to him and the bartender talk. So she might be a little satisfied to know he did take apprentices. So she might have some burning questions about that important thing. So what? Didn't mean shit. ... Then he started mentioning where she'd been all day, and she decided it was the perfect time to walk in. Old man, was in the area. Fancy seeing you here. She sat down right next to him, only realizing a second after she turned to look at him that she grabbed the wrong chair. She screamed internally, putting on a brave face and a big smile. Sorry, but you're done with your menu, right? I'ma just take that tilde. She pretended it's what she meant to do, going to her usual seat and reading over the menu. She leaned back, reading it over while sneaking glances at him. He looked tired. Yeah, pretty tired. He kept rubbing his shoulders, making small talk with bartender guy. Couldn't remember his name. I'll take. She'd already eaten since it was late, but she couldn't miss this. Beer. You can pick kind. Oh, but a salad would be nice too. Salad and a beer. Bartender guy nodded and poured her a pint while the mysterious old man rubbed his forearms. He really did have scars everywhere. Kind of badass. A little bit. Maybe. A lot. He wore most of his usual outfit, but the gloves were missing. Quote ... Hey old man, where are your glove things? ... Nailed it. Mayo, yes. I had to wear them most of the day and decided to take them off before coming thank you. Ken took his soup while Maruko tried to figure out why she could remember his name, but not the bartender she'd met 3 more times than she met Ken. You doing martial arts? Thought you said you didn't tilde. She teased him but he shook his head. No, I have a student, against my better judgment. It appears I'm a little overconfident in my skills, thinking I can teach someone. He laughed and continued eating drinking. Consuming his soup. She smiled, knowing that he did take students, not that she'd be a student, mind you. Just getting a few tips. To beat that Ronin motherfucker. She wasn't doing this in any personal interest. You teach a class. Mind if I drop by? She took a swig of beer before looking at him, smiling wildly. No, I just teach small private lessons one-on-one. We don't really have a classroom you could drop by to. Private 1-1-1. That meant if she did one, she could spar with Ken herself and see how good he really was. So I can sign up and beat the shit out of you. Sounds fun. She laughed at the thought, but so did Ken. I can only take one student at a time, and I'm afraid this might be my last. Besides, you want to be so proud of beating up someone my age. Quite rude. He was smirking, so he wasn't being entirely serious. Still, low blow. Come on, just a few rounds. ... A few tips. Give me something to work with Ken. Her salad came, and she started munching on it with a frown. How old was Ken again? She couldn't remember if he mentioned it, but he looked. Well, good for his age was an overstatement with all his scars. He looked like he was living well for his age. Quote ... I'm afraid most of my free time is taken between my work and my current student. He was still working, so that meant. He was under 60 if he only worked one job, right? You needed to work 40 years to retire, but what if he had been going for the maximum? That just meant he was under 70. I need to work in the mornings. I assume you don't want to pay for lessons. Oh yeah, he probably could take a few hours off if it was for his old dojo or whatever. He definitely felt like he worked at a dojo, so if she paid for lessons, she could steal him from his standard work. She even had a lot of money saved up since she hadn't broken anything important while working on a job in a while. I can pay, I'm not some cheap bitch. Who do you think I am? Alright, very nice as usual Sozu, you're outdoing yourself. He took a large plate, adjusting his napkin and slowly tucking into it. I'm afraid I can only accept cash on such short notice. Would next week be good? How many hours do you want to put in? He took out his notebook with one hand and took another bite with the other. Why was he so fun to look at? I don't know. This is my first time. You got a beginner course. Quote ... The weekend then. Saturday, all day. Do you have somewhere you'd like to meet up? I'm afraid I don't have my own place to train anymore. He used that I'm afraid phrase a lot. I think I know a place. But let's meet at the park in case that doesn't work, the one 2 blocks. What direction was it? She was rambling, she just needed to focus. He laughed again, calming her down. I understand. I'll be there at 9 AM. I look forward to trying to teach you, but I'm not certain how much I'll be able to teach a professional hero as skilled as yourself, Ms. Usajiyama. Another bite, and another smile. How'd he make it look so easy? He was doing that smile thing almost every time. Wait, she was doing it too. How was she doing it? She drank again, trying to figure out how she was doing it. This smile felt different. It wasn't unpleasant, but she didn't get it. Ken ate quickly, seeming as professional as ever. Giving him a good look, it was hard to tell what his quirk was at a glance. Maybe it didn't have to do with fighting, and that's why he learned martial arts. She spoke with him briefly, and getting her first lesson for only 1,000 yen. Well, that was what he said she needed to pay, but that was pretty insultingly low. Most places gave free first lessons, but she was dragging Ken out of retirement. The least she could do was a little compensation. After giving up debating it on the spot, their conversation became more relaxed. He left first, leaving her to nurse her 5th round. She waved goodbye to him, smiling wide. It was nice being around the old man. He was a great listener, pretty badass looking, and didn't weigh her down with useless stuff. A thought crossed her head and made her open her eyes fully. She blinked a couple of times as she thought it over. He was, like, 60 or something. She just turned 26. Quote ... I am a reverse cougar. She immediately slammed her head into the counter, nearly cracking it and getting up, laughing hysterically at the absurd thought, before throwing half her money at the counter and making a break for the exit. Chapter and notes. Yo 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 yo, yo yo, yo, yo 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 yo, ya know, yo. From the top, just giving Midoriya a really bad night to put him in the right mood to be introspective into why everything is going horribly wrong. Midoriya's Ronin speech is mostly inspired but just how bad of a day he had coming home from Hosu, leading him to look back over his life. Nezu's stuff on memory is real, although it's usually just eyes. The eyes will look in certain directions depending on what it's thinking about, like eyes will look to the right usually when lying because eyes look to the right when using the imagination, and the head usually turns slightly when the eyes move. Also, yes, Nezu is currently Ronin's biggest fan. No, Ronin does not have any merchandise. Not yet. Hope the bar scene wasn't too awful to sit through, I just wanted to write it. I enjoyed it at least, and when you're as bored as me, that's a pretty good reason sometimes. Trying to set up future developments and keep this train wreck moving forward, I'll see how it all pans out. Maybe we'll even get into the major reveals soon, who knows Tilda. Chapter 62. Chapter Summary. Yo, yo. Have a good time yo. We here to see the final week of Kaminari's training. It's happening. Probably. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya shifted thin parchments together, checking how well this batch had solidified. He sorted them, some to be torn to pieces and recreated, others for sewing into packets, then into the coverless book. He'd finish at the end of the week, most likely. He checked his many projects, nodding over each as they progressed, and stopped at the one he didn't start. A gray beanie rested on the table, along with a note. It was finished, unlike how he left it. How long ago had he worked on it? Not even a week. He picked up the note, reading it over, a small smile crossing his face. He looked at the hat, then put it on. A little big, but so was his hair. He adjusted it a few times, then reread the note before closing it. A gift like this had to be reciprocated. Midoriya mumbled for a minute or two, thinking it over, before checking the time. Yeah, he had time. Today we're going over kendo, since you want swordplay so much. Ronin held up a bag with some sticks hanging out. Ditch the jacket and get hydrated, we'll be only doing the basics today. Alrighty. Hey master, I got another question. Ronin removed his coat, slipping into the kendo set. He had asked for a few tips when he borrowed the pieces. Ronin nodded to the boy as he adjusted the cloth mask, making sure everything was in place. Why aren't we covering quirk use more, like testing my limits? Todoroki best guy in 1A can make these huge ice walls, do you remember him? You fought him on the bridge. Of course I do. Ronin shook his head, chuckling. Is Todoroki the best guy in class because he makes these huge ice walls? Kaminari thought it over and stopped chugging Gatorade for a second. I think so. His only competition is Bakugo, but that guy has no chill, ya know. Bakugo, not the other recommended student. Kaminari shook his head, and he continued. Quote. Is he the best because of his power then? They were getting to the sensei-esque wisdom, he could feel it. I think so, yeah. That's how you get into the top 10 heroes, after all. Nezu leaned forward, ecstatic. Come on. Gimme another good one. For some reason, Ronin was really good at making speeches. Not a clue if he just had them all prepared or was a natural speaker, but he always seemed to have on in the bag just in case. He'd asked him about becoming a teacher and instead got rocked by a speech about the life and death of a vigilante. Kaminari, do you know how a gun works? Nezu and Kaminari blinked, but Ronin picked up his sword, tapping the bullet-powered sheath. Don't worry, I'll explain. To start with, we're gonna talk about the life and times of a bullet. Ronin removed the clip from his sword, then flicked out a single bullet, tossing it to Kaminari, who managed to catch it this time with only 2 fumbles. Ronin pulled out another, holding it between forefinger and thumb. You might not know how bullets work. Most Japanese citizens don't. Maybe we could get Snipe here for a speech on it, but I've got bigger fish to fry. Inside this little bullet is a propellant and explosive, but just a tiny amount. The gun's job is to trigger the explosion, and focus it so the bullet flies out in a certain direction. Ronin added hand motions to better explain to the pupil, then switched to action movie terms so he could better understand it. You know how when the car explodes, little bits go everywhere. The gun is aiming those little bits to hit a certain target. Kaminari nodded, and Ronin continued with the explanation. The explosion itself is really small, actually. The best it can do is maybe hurt your finger. But when it's focused by the gun, it can. Well, why talk? Ronin picked a gun off the table, put the bullet into the clip, and pointed it at the dummy. Bang. The gun turns a little power into something much more dangerous. If the explosion was bigger, do you know what had happened though? He actively kept Kaminari involved in the discussion, forcing his student to think. Quote. The bullet would go further. No wait, this is supposed to be a problem. So, Kaminari managed to figure out through context that what would happen wouldn't be good, at least. Quote. The gun would explode. It'd take quite a big explosion to do that, but yes, I suppose that would be bad. Ronin laughed. The explosion would blow up the gun, but the bullet wouldn't get as far. Sometimes, less power is more destructive. And my job is to turn that less. Ronin reloaded his holster, then performed Kaminari's signature attack, from an anime over 200 years old. Bang Fshing tilde. The sword cleaved the entire dummy in two in a single stroke, much more destructive than the single bullet which hit the dummy center mass. Both attacks hit the same spot, but Ronin's tore through metal like cardboard, and unlike the last time he did this, his sword was fine. Into more. If you hone the minor details of your electricity, you can make these cheap shots look like golf swings. Kaminari was clearly inspired by the physical demonstration. Through repetition, dramatic speeches, and action, Ronin appealed to Kaminari's tastes and taught him lessons. You don't need to make huge bursts of lightning. A bomb can only do one thing, Kaminari, and I'll make you a sword. Bombs only destroy. Swords can dance, defend, attack, and so much more. Do you understand? Quote. Instead of only doing big attack things, like a bomb. Kaminari rephrased it, showing that he understood the message. Ronin wouldn't chastise him if he got it wrong, encouraging him to explore around. You want me to get really good at using my power in small amounts, so I can help more people and last longer. Ronin clapped him on the back. Superb, Kaminari. I didn't even mention the longer endurance, you figured that out yourself, Kaminari. Excellent thinking. Kaminari's face lit up at the praise. Nezu wondered when was the last time someone genuinely complimented Kaminari's thinking. Made him feel a little guilty. The two began to spar. Well, that was a strong word. Kaminari put the helmet on backward and freaked out while Ronin walked him through it, calm as ever. It felt a little odd for Nezu, sitting on his side of the screen. It was Wednesday, and he had a small meeting to attend. Nezu looked through the mess that Aizawa had created. Hundreds of reports, all to find Ronin's real identity. Quote. You do know you should have had the police do this, right? You can take off if you need to. This is a personal matter. No, it's beyond personal. Aizawa had the focus of a man staring death in the face and looked straight past. Quote. Is this because he's teaching Kaminari better than you did? Probably. He's pissing me off more than those brats. At least he was honest. You could learn from his style, ask him for advice, and improve, you know. All Might should be more worried than me about his teaching style. I'm annoyed that Kaminari can actually remember anything he talks about but can barely remember a paper I gave him 10 minutes ago. Nezu shifted through the papers, pinning down his suspected time frame. Anything after Ronin's curfew was removed. Anything from when he was in school was removed. Then he focused on when the noise complaint started, and the first incident of a seemingly no-quirk attacker. If his theory was right, and the reports were true, Ronin didn't always have his teleporting sword. He probably wouldn't at his first outing. What am I worried about? Toshinori walked up, coffee in hand. Nezu finished sorting through the incidents and dismissed Aizawa, assuring him he'd be at least the 5th person to know when he found out. Ronin teaching Kaminari, but more on that another time. He waved goodbye to Aizawa, then refocused on the number 1 hero. You're not in trouble, All Might. Sit. Toshinori was definitely figuring out something was off, slowly sitting down. Nezu poured him some tea, smiling all the way. He couldn't figure out what until Nezu kept on trucking, all smiles the whole way. Sue, have you been telling people that it's okay to dream, but they need to be realistic? Nezu hammered home on the first hit, and Toshinori's reaction gave away everything. The small fidgeting, unable to make eye contact and looking to the left and down, reflecting on a memory. He had him, which was good, because this was his only lead on the whole it's okay to dream, but yada yada, thing, and if it wasn't All Might he didn't have a clue who it really was. Quote. Ah, you met, him. Met Ronin. He obviously did, but, maybe All Might was talking about Ronin's alter ego, or Ronin himself. I tried to meet with him and apologize, but I couldn't find him. He wasn't on the route Bakugo told me he'd be. Quote. What Bakugo? Did Ronin know Bakugo? How were they connected? Quote. I don't seem to know everything that's going on. We'll start at the beginning now, Toshinori. He might have been smiling as he was leaning forward, but it was a dangerous smile. He pulled out a pen and paper. Quote. Go ahead. Start when ready. After I passed by a window on my way down, I noticed that the bottles I stored the villain in were missing. Hold up. You, firstly, landed on a random building in the middle of town. Then, showed him your weakened form. Next, you told him he could never be a hero. And as a grand conclusion to all of that, you left him on top of the building. Were you trying to see how many of his dreams you could break in one afternoon? Nezu rubbed his head. You know he might have jumped right. You barely even remember this kid's name, but he might have dived off the building for God's sake. No, he didn't. I went to where the slime villain was, and he went there too. He fought the slime villain with just a trash can and was starting to pull out Bakugo when the villain almost killed him, and I stepped in. He didn't bother to console the child that much it seemed. The problem was that he might have killed himself, not that All Might wouldn't have known if he killed himself. But I was overwhelmed after the fight by the reporters. Don't worry, the other heroes on the scene took care of the boys, just ask Bakugo. This villain attack. God, how long ago was that? Over a year ago, entire months before they were looking for him. That was ages ago. It put Ronin's real age as the same as Bakugo. Did they know each other? Oh, Bakugo and Midoriya went to the same school at least. Finally, a name. Midoriya. Yeah, that name didn't mean anything to him. More research for later. Their uniforms were the same, and Bakugo knew where Midoriya lived. From what he saw of their personalities, they wouldn't get along very well. Even his lecture this afternoon differed from Bakugo's ideas of power, it seemed. He wasn't sure anymore though. Maybe he'd have to give each of his students a closer inspection. I considered giving him one for all, but I couldn't find him. The boy never came home. So either the boy, Midoriya, was Ronin or knew Ronin in some way. It seemed the beginning of the story stuck with him more than the ending. Perhaps Midoriya became Ronin, but perhaps he died shortly after passing the story on, creating Ronin as a sort of vengeance for the people who wronged Midoriya. Either way, it seemed that boy was the inciting incident. He could narrow it down further, but from experience, he knew something that most people wouldn't pair them together by, funnily enough. It was one of his own largest traits, and a distinctive trait of Ronin too that most people wouldn't notice. Midoriya was rather short at the time, yes. Toshinori nodded. You would have thought he was a first year in middle school with how small he was, not a third year. That put him in the age gap he wanted. Just started his third year and beaten down, Midoriya became the vigilante Ronin. Or one of his friends did. It leaned towards Midoriya, but the reports would tell him more. He'd get them tomorrow. I'd say you're not in trouble, but that's a lie. You should have told someone about this, shouldn't have left him on the rooftop, and should have re-examined your priorities. Keep this in mind going forward. Quote. He is fine, isn't he? Nezu had to cock his head at the thought. Quote. Perhaps. I never heard of any dream crushing well, never any dream crushing in detail. Just a boy who was let down by his favorite hero, Toshinori flinched at that. Keep in mind we don't just protect people's bodies, but their dreams too. Yes sir. Toshinori bowed, then left, leaving the mammal to his thoughts. He drummed his fingers together for a moment, then began typing the requests for the documents he'd need to pile everything together and crack this mystery once and for all. Marvelous boy, marvelous. Ronin and Kaminari held the sticks in one hand, with Kaminari's legs emitting sparks as they danced. Such fluidity. You have improved by leaps and bounds. Yesterday, he left Kaminari with kendo gear from UA, supplied by his least favorite principal in the world. Now, after training for most of the day, Kaminari could attack and move while emitting electricity without stopping. Mostly. A few hiccups here or there, but he was doing quite well overall. Thank you, sir. Kaminari's sword flicked forward, taking advantage of the gap Ronin left and bonking him on the shoulder. He was smiling, enjoying himself. Good. You really have merged the previous skills quite well. Kaminari probably practiced moving while generating electricity in his free time. Now, it's time for the overly complicated bits. Are you ready? A bit more practice please. A student who wasn't afraid to voice their complaints learned better. Ronin nodded, then switched arms. He usually used his right, taking a fencing stance, but now he used violence as roof guard. Then let's see how you handle this. Ronin stepped forward, forcing Kaminari to adjust to the new crushing force. This really was excellent. This really was terrible. Nezu stepped backward, forcing himself to stop looking at this. How many cover-ups could a kid handle? Whether or not Midoriya was Ronin was, for the time, irrelevant. More important was the child from the school reports that had been covered, and the fact there were probably many, many more. Hospital records of burns, reports of bruises, isolation, verbal harassment. The fact that Midoriya wasn't the next all for one was a miracle. He looked at the one listed. A burn in the distinctive shape of a handprint was reported on the back of his neck as if someone held him down while emitting high temperatures. It wasn't even the injury he was there for and seemed to have never been reported, but discovered by accident while checking something else. He might have a grudge against people, but it felt like Midoriya was one of his people with all the injuries the boy procured. And those were just physical. His eyes shifted down to the camera feed from the slime villain incident and got to watch the last of the boy's spirit and trust shatter in low definition. He hesitantly clicked play and watched, his usual smile plastered on, but looking as fake Monopoly money. He couldn't hear everything, but he could hear the heroes and follow Midoriya's gaze. From the fight, he rushed forward when Bakugo looked at the crowd. Not a moment's hesitation, just like All Might mentioned this morning. He danced around the villain, using his environment to attack, but it was obviously his first fight. The school records told him that, but he could see the mistakes that today's Ronin would never make. But shining through the mistakes and dirt, the shining core that would be remolded into Ronin. The first footwork, the relentless effort, throwing himself in the way of others. The final moment against the sludge villain had Midoriya position himself. He wasn't trying to avoid the hit, he was entirely focused on getting Bakugo out. At first, Nezu thought he wasn't aware of the villain, but a few calculations showed that the attack, while most likely killing Midoriya, would knock Bakugo out of the villain. After such a display, would he be paraded? Only if you spelled paraded B-E-R-A-T-E-D. You die here, all our reputations go on the line. If you don't care about yourself, at least look out for others. Death arms, to use a more modern and hip phrase, what the fuck were you saying? Midoriya's head snapped up from his rest, looking at him. He then began to gather his things off the ground, scattered by his own attack. Sheesh, all this shit on my first day. The press isn't going to be good. You could see him twitch, glaring at MT. Lady now. The heroes he once admired, the innocent admiration of the boy described by All Might, all of it was now dead. Though the eyes couldn't be focused on, he could see the exact moment the straw broke the camel's back by following the boy's eyes. The people were further away from the camera he chose to listen through, but if he listened closely, he could make it out. You were pretty brave kid, I'd love to take you as a sidekick someday. Midoriya, who had looked broken before that, had reformed. Seeing that half of him showed him the side when he first met Ronin, an animal in human skin. It made sense, in a way. He did all of the work, and Nezu was a smart boy. He could figure out who started those fires. While Midoriya had bent down to pick up his things, Ronin rose, shouldering the bag. He left, muttering words that he couldn't quite make out. He danced through the people on his way out, passing directly by the camera. Quote ... You gonna look on disapprovingly and wait for some kid to do most of the work, then have All Might step in at the last second to clear up your mess. Nezu then watched the child saunter on past. His shoes weren't the ones from his memory, but the pants were. He could see the yellow backpack as well. Following the next part became a paper trail. It was kind of funny. Technically, nothing he had done, on record, was a crime. He never illegally used his quirk, he physically couldn't. The cases he tracked down to being likely Izuku Midoriya, age 14 at the time, were either probably self-defense or definitely self-defense. It was so hilariously consistent he wondered if it was intentional. Ronin was known for a while to always let his opponent give the first attack, but that could be seen as intentional goading. From a legal perspective, though, it put him in a position of self-defense. The major crime they might put to his name is breaking and entering. But most people couldn't prove that he was the one who was doing it. Midoriya seemed a bright kid by his grades and the fact that he had any in the tiny school he was currently at. He investigated around, and all his teachers gave high remarks for the quiet boy who never fought. He had, however, taken the week off from school. He worked ahead apparently and was already finished with the menial assignments, and didn't have any actual work until the tests started. He was the head of a club, focused on crafting with 3 clubmates, all of which weren't real people. Deku, Kachan, Ak, who made these names? He'd investigate his current life more later, but he wasn't sure he was in the right mindset to keep reading it get worse and worse. Kaminari just kept getting better and better. He had the right mindset to move right now, even if only for a moment. Did you see me? I did it. He threw the stick into the air, laughing before it bounced off his dome. Kaminari had done his first successful dash with electricity running through his legs. The electricity tricked his muscles into tensing and relaxing faster than they normally should have, allowing him to dash with an incredible speed. For a few steps. Kaminari's first dash had lasted a whopping half a step, when he accidentally shot one of his legs up so quickly he fell over. It was still a success, at least. Ronin laughed with Kaminari. Excellent Kaminari, but you're not done yet I'm afraid. He helped the boy off the ground, even if the boy was larger than him. Kaminari smiled, then noticed something. Quote ... I didn't know you were shorter than me. That's what happens when you start holding your head up, Kaminari. Ronin gave him a pat on the back, chuckling, then moving out of the way. You can do this. 12 reps, 100 reps, 1,000 reps, even if it takes 1,000,000 reps, you can do this. Kaminari nodded, then tried to get back into the former mindset, dashing around as he tried to do it again. Ronin packed up the things he brought, checking the clock. We've only got 20 more minutes, so wrap up in 5, then review. He mumbled to himself, unaware of Nezu and Midnight's arrival. Leaning down, you could see a strange burn on the back of his neck. Alone, it just looked like a strange round spot. If you know what it was, though, you could see the beginning of the handprint. Even as he spoke, Ronin himself didn't start to stop, but adjusted his tank top and got back into swinging his swords. There seemed to a syncopated rhythm to it, but not to each other. The swords would attack at predetermined intervals to themselves, like half a second between one and 3/4 a second between the other. This made it seem random, but each arm independently had a tempo they never broke. Midnight was looking pretty interested at him, and Nezu thought he could let her know later. If ever, this should have been something he'd tell everyone. Boot. Some things were better left unspoken, like All Might's form. Wait, didn't that mean Ronin knew about that? And he never brought it up? The cheeky bastard, he still pretended that All Might was in his prime while he knew he wasn't. Nezu laughed to himself, but only Midnight paid attention to him. Kaminari dashed around, then flipped head over heels and crashed into the padding. Ronin began to speed up, creating a wall of steel while his arms pumped. Each strike wasn't heavy on its own, but it required a lot of strength to move the blades that fast. Each swing could be lethal if Ronin wanted it to. Oh, hey, what are you guys doing here? Kaminari waved hello from the floor, laughing. Ronin didn't even break pace. Hello. I just wanted to stop by again. Tomorrow is your last day together, after all. Ronin nodded again, turning the head movement into overhead slashes and continuing. He'd been slashing for 15 seconds without stopping, swinging around 2 heavy chunks of metal like feathers. How long did it take to learn that? He had never considered until now. Do you have anything special planned for the finale? Nezu tried to get closer but he was stuck to Midnight, who seemed to naturally repel him. It made sense. If he was a hero who wasn't about reputation or followers, he might not like being around heroes who did, and Midnight had quite the fanbase. Every lesson is important, from the first to the last. In an instant, he went from slashing to sheathing, then facing Kaminari. 7 successful activations Kaminari, excellent. We're done, so get over here. They began talking back over what they learned that day, with Kaminari leading the discussion to prove that he remembered it. Ronin mostly sat back and nodded, offering occasional additional words when prompted. Ronin finished packing up and prepared to leave, wishing Kaminari goodbye and still ignoring everyone else. Quote. Hey, Master Ronin dude sir. Ronin stopped, not looking back, but stopping. It was good enough for Kaminari. Quote. Is tomorrow the last time we'll train? Quote. The hell are you talking about? Ronin still didn't look back but shook his head. Can you only train while I'm here? Will you stop training when I'm gone? Do you think I'm gonna die the second I leave tomorrow's training? There's a reason it's not called our final training session, Kaminari. Ronin waved goodbye without looking, walking out of the room like he owned the place. Quote. He's so cool, Nezu said with eyes sparkling. Chapter end notes. We'll be picking up with Ronin and Kaminari on the final day of their training together, and we'll get back to mostly Midoriya's perspective soon. Yo, these updates take longer the more stuff I put in them. Who knew? I could explain little details but you read the same dumpster fire I wrote. Find the details you want. I will say we skip the bookmaking because it's mostly repetition right now. We'll be coming back on the day it all comes together again. It's weird writing from Nezu's perspective because I had to reread the first chapters for his analysis. Yes, Midoriya intentionally tries to aggravate his opponent into attacking first so he can legally pass it off as self-defense. Even with that, Ronin still does have crimes to his name. Funnily enough, it's none of the things he's known for. His main crimes that I can think of right now are breaking and entering like into Tatsun Lover's place, pickpocketing in his early days when he took loose change, but still when he takes the weapons and illegal ownership of guns. Gun laws are tight in Japan. Besides cringing at my own bad style, I think this chapter sure did happen. Was it good? Was it bad? I found it preachy, but my goal is to try new things, so let's go with this and watch the dumpster fire burn. Adios. Chapter 63, Kaminari's Final. Chapter Summary. It's the final day of Kaminari's internship, time to finish the book and get into the man behind the mask. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya shipped out early to put everything together. It was a lot of work, and he needed to work quickly. First up was All for One's book. Midoriya sewed the papers into packets, then stacked them all up, sewed the packets to pieces of rope to create the pages for the book, finishing by gluing the papers and ropes together. The ropes served as a basis, putting the weight off all the paper making it less terrible. Next, he applied the covers. Thin sheets of fabric, then 2 sheets of plywood formed from the pulp and glue, with the rope spread and frayed before being glued between the fabric and plywood, cementing the bond. All this ended with more glue, then leather, then stitching, finally metal brackets to hold the entire piece together. He checked the details, although they were unnecessary. Embedded in the book was a black diamond-shaped gem that he had to inlay himself. Not too shabby, if he said so himself. The pages retained a little of that brown color for style, it weighed a ton and was pretty solid. Glue wasn't good for long-term most of the time, but books weren't usually meant to have a lot of wear and tear. Treated right, this book could last quite a while. If he did it right. He based it on YouTubers and not actual professional bookmakers, so who knew? He was going to do the ring later, but he figured out he could just use a small buzzer ring he found for 100 yen in a new body. He finished it up now. The gem could be turned to adjust the voltage and was on a tiny switch. Pushing the gem forward would turn the ring on, pulling it back turned it off. Plus, you could remove the gem to switch the teeny battery he found. Midoriya had to deal with the hardest part of the whole project though, the tiny gem. All for One wanted an adjustable ring. Fine, it could be done, just a little annoying. Wanted a tiny battery. It was an experiment for him too, why not? But putting that stupid little gem into the contraption he made. Fuck, it was so annoying. After an hour of attempts, the ring had a gem in it, could create the electric current, and looked good. Only was way too hard. Midoriya quickly put the finishing touches on his gift to Eiko for the hat, nodding to himself before setting out, keeping the ring in a box so nothing could damage it, pain in the ass that it was, along with his final contraption. Midoriya showed up in a gray beanie. No mask, no apparent sword, just the package and some sticks, all in a cheap disguise. I brought the book in the ring, but I'm going to need a loan on those quirks. I won 3. His eyes were strong, his voice steady. Midoriya was calm and relaxed, handing Kurogiri the box. Kurogiri checked it before passing it off to his master. Quote. It seems to be missing about half the requested pages. Midoriya tilted his head. 400, right, there should be 400 pages in there. All for One looked at the book, seeming to realize something. Quote. I was not aware one sheet of parchment made 2 pages. It appears to be an oversight on my part. I believe then you already know what my next request will be. Oh, he wanted 400 sheets. Looks like he'd be remaking the book soon then. Very well, I will grant you the quirks you desire. Do you have anything in mind? Midoriya pulled out 3 sketches, placing them down on the floor and bowing deeply as he made his request. Kaminari could now sort of do the lightning step on command. Like, half of the time. Sometimes. Occasionally alright, so he had barely improved. But he was getting way better at it. When he did do it, he no longer tripped and fell on his ass, or at least he cut himself before he fell on his ass most of the time, and wasn't that what really mattered? He had just finished his stretches and breathing and now lined up his body with the target. Today should be the day they'd put it together. Again. Kind of what they did last time. But they did again. He breathed in for as much air as possible, then leaned forward at the hips, keeping his upper body straight and pointing to the target. Feet flexed, his left arm held his sheath, and his right arm swung forward to build momentum as the air began to hiss, his entire body rocketing like the lightning bolt he was becoming. Nezu had already finished all his work before lunch and was now on to more minor details. He usually let his teachers have free roam, but it was time to delve into details more. If he wanted to get Midoriya on his side, he had to make his facility one the teacher would approve of. Moving up the learning date for first aid, combat instruction, courses over reviewing informational of these had to be implemented, but it seemed most would be coming in next year. It wasn't looking good, but it was better late than never. Ears twitched at a familiar alarm. Ronin was early, heading straight for Nezu's office, and fully decked. He wore his old coat, all his weapons, and carried a full bag. It seemed Ronin did have something prepared for the final day, but wouldn't let it slip in front of his student. Ronin moved through the crowds, hidden by his old disguise. The bamboo hat and cloak hid his body, and he stuck the badge like a tassel in front of his face to hide it while looking ridiculous. The students didn't even seem worried about the strange man in their presence, but for a hero, he did look quite tame. Not eye-catching, which is what most heroes strive for, just odd. He now knocked on Nezu's front door. Nezu wanted to take him to one side, but this was a little early by the principal's count. Nezu still needed to get his ducks in a row, clearing both his throat and thoughts. Come in. Ronin entered, burying Midoriya under armor and grit as he put on a stern expression. Good morning, sir. I want to borrow all UA. Quote. What? Ronin entered the training room, looking around the room one last time. Who knew when the next time he'd be here legally? He looked at Kaminari, still trying his best to dash while using the Godspeed. It was almost there, it was so close to being the real Godspeed. Just one little push, and he intended to give his disciple that little bit of help. He put down the bag, then checked the things he'd picked up. Everything seemed in place. It was time to get started. Kaminari. A good dash there, somebody's been putting the time in. Kaminari finished his set, smiling and running over. You saw that. I almost got it, Chief. He sheathed his sword, then gave a big smile. Warmed his jaded old heart. You ate lunch yet? Ronin checked the equipment, nodding before giving Kaminari his full attention. Nope. Should I now? Ronin nodded, laughing. I must admit, I'm a bit of a fan of lunch rush. Couldn't turn down his food if I tried. They left, going to the lunchroom. Kaminari had been eating lunch late since his classmates weren't there, and he didn't have any of his friends to eat with. But now he got to eat with his boss. They went to lunch rush, Kaminari leading quickly while Ronin held back, reading over the list a few times before stepping up. Katsudon and water, please. Ro, what are you doing here? Lunch rush was surprised to see him, but Ronin just nodded to Kaminari. Oh, final day, huh? You got something special planned. Check your notifications from Principal Nezu, you should be hearing about it soon. Ronin took his food and bowed again, sitting down with Kaminari at his usual table. Kaminari ate quickly, only stopping to stare as Ronin removed his helmet. He looked as grizzled as Kaminari always imagined him, having a cool stubble and scar on his right eye. Kirishima would have been so jealous. He tied his hair up, bowed his head, said quick thanks, and began to eat slowly, smiling deeply. He covered his eyes with this weird black cloth, but you could see the bottom of the scar peeking out. Kaminari always knew he was a hidden mentor, and his real appearance showed it off. He radiated wisdom. Wait, did that mean if you were close enough you picked up some of his wisdom? Kaminari scooted a little closer to the old man. His hair was brown still, but you could see the beginning of gray mixed in, like a gray wig dyed brown. The scars accented just how muscular Ronin really was. Dude, you look so cool. Ronin glanced at him, then smiled and gave a soft chuckle. You flatter me, Kaminari. He took another bite, looking over the crowds of people, his smile slowly fading. Quote. Are you ready for the end of this companionship? The apprenticeship. I think so. Kaminari thought up the events. Fought monsters, won, fought Stain, won, learned this sick dash attack, got a cool sword, and hung out with you. I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it, but the graduation test is coming. He was so foreboding, how did he do that? Kaminari listened to his words, ready to study them if necessary. This will be the final part of your apprenticeship. We will fight for 10 minutes at a time, with 30 seconds to break every time one of us is hit. He laid out the spar's rules, and Kaminari tried to memorize all of them. Ronin helped by doing hand motions, something Kaminari could replicate and helped him remember easier. We'll break when classes do as well. Any questions? How long we break at the end of the 10 minutes? 1 minute. How long do we break at the end of class? Until classes restart. Alrighty, I got it. Kaminari smiled at him, and Ronin seemed to be a little sad. Somber. That meant like, calm sad. Yeah. If you can beat this, Kaminari, I assure you that you will be much better off than your classmates. Ronin began to drink his water slowly as the intercom came on. Attention all students, you might be hearing something for the rest of the day in the halls. We shall be having an event outside, do not worry. It will stop when classes end, so please deal with any problems at the break. Ronin set down the now empty glass and picked up both their empty plates. Everyone but them was leaving for classes now. Lunch rush shut the kitchen down right after Ronin gave him their plates. Ronin approached again, tapping a timer on his jacket. This will ring when we take our breaks. The 30-second breaks count for time. And, Kaminari. Kaminari chose to stand up, vaguely aware of what was about to happen. Ronin grabbed his helmet and gave him one final look. Quote. Just believe in yourself. Not in the Kaminari I believe in, not in the Ronin you believe in. Ronin tapped Kaminari in the chest, smiling. Believe in the Kaminari who believes in you. Ronin stepped back, starting the timer, and slipping his helmet on. Quote. Well, no point in wasting time. Ronin flipped over the table and drew his sword in one motion. Kaminari hadn't gotten a chance to take off his sword, and he started to suspect why he'd never gotten that chance. Ronin's first strike cleaved downward, putting the momentum behind his flip into the swing. Parrying would be impossible, and it forced Kaminari on the defensive from the very start. Ronin didn't even bother with both swords. He didn't even use his real sword. Just his right hand in Stain's, carving the air into giblets. It swung at Kaminari with extreme force, making him dodge. Any attempt to block was crushed, any counter swings knocked aside. Ronin used only power to force Kaminari across the lunchroom. The first hit happened 15 seconds into the exchange, striking Kaminari with the flat of the blade to the ribs. It was a hit that meant Ronin pierced all of Kaminari's defenses. Upon the successful hit, Kaminari remembered to call it out. Hit. Ronin stepped back into a kneeling position, resting. Kaminari adopted a similar pose, hearing the second stick. It was hard to keep track of them with the hammering of his heart. They were 12 feet apart, he could try a squash thunderclap and flash. Begin. Ronin leapt off the ground, performing a squash thunderclap and flash. Kaminari had to roll out of the way, using the small training he got on the beach to reposition himself. He lined up his feet for the thunderclap and flash, then another swing at his head. Kaminari was forced backward, hitting a chair and nearly falling over, then pushed back and downward by powerful stroke after stroke. It completely overwhelmed him, until he fell on his back. He felt the steel smack his leg and sputtered out his response. H-hit. He rolled over to see Ronin meditating again. Kaminari didn't try to mimic him this time, going straight into the position for thunderclap and flash. The second he said to start, he performed the move. Thunderclap. And begin. Bolt. The sword drew across his body to defend against attacks, then rose over his head. It was a clean slash downward, strong enough to break bones, but instead of trying to dodge, Ronin took the same stance and met him with the same attack, a lunging overhead right slash. Their swords clashed for a moment as Kaminari tried to remember what he learned in kendo. Quote. A strong attack, but this favors the stronger. Ronin forced Kaminari's sword to one side and hit him on his own first attack. Hit. Nezu watched from his office as Kaminari was, for lack of a better term, crushed. When fighting on Ronin's terms, no one was better. Forget All Might's weakness, not even All Might could win in prime condition if he tried to beat Ronin at his own game. The fact Kaminari didn't lose on every first blow was amazing enough. His eyes flicked to the training room where Ronin had left his bag. He wasn't petty enough to look through someone else's things. Nimari, could you be a dear and go get a bag in the third training room? Thanks. His eyes returned to the fight. It was the end of the first 10-minute spar, and according to the rules, it was time for them to relax for a moment. Ronin looked the epitome of calm. He knelt on the ground, hands on his knees, and breathing quietly. Kaminari looked haggard. Thunderclap and flash, thunderclap and bolt, nothing worked. He rubbed his head, trying to think of a tactic. Ronin was stoic and silent, as immobile as a mountain. 10 seconds. Kaminari breathed out, then in as much as possible. This was what his master considered his final test, and he could see why. He wasn't sure if he'd pass it in 10 years, let alone today. They collided again, their steel echoing around the room like thunder. Their first match in the second spar lasted a minute and a half before Kaminari backed into a table and got poked. Ronin even had enough time to flip his sword, hitting Kaminari with the pommel instead of the tip. Kaminari rested on the table, watching him. He probably was meditating during the 30-second break, trying to regain as much energy as possible. Wait, Kaminari had meditated before too. It had been really boring, stuck in a kneeling position. But the worst part wasn't moving, it was that you couldn't see. Kaminari took one hesitant step to the left. Then another, and another, slowly creeping around until he was behind Ronin. He was smiling, this was a great idea. He readied himself to hit Ronin the second he started the match. Begin. Ronin spoke but paused for a moment. Kaminari slashed, but instead of standing up he stepped to one side and turned 180 degrees, slashing and hitting Kaminari in the side, winding him. Oh hit. Og. Kaminari rubbed his stomach, then looked at Ronin. He had paused, and he hadn't told Kaminari that was illegal. That meant. Begin. Kaminari was nowhere in sight. Ronin rose, placing a hand on his saya and another on his handle. He crept along, listening. Sure enough, he heard snickering. He walked past it, then Kaminari sprung out. Gotcha. Bonk. You got Mano, hit. Kaminari had begun to shake off the funk. Until now, Kaminari was just copying him. But it was time for his apprentice to spread his wings. A little sobering, but he couldn't take that step for Kaminari. That was something he could help with, but only Kaminari could take it himself. He had been the rewarding parent enough, it was time to be strict. Kaminari eventually realized something amazing. This was a fight. This wasn't a duel, it wasn't a match of heroes versus villains, this was a fight. There were no rules on what he could or couldn't do. That's why, at the start of the third spar, he led by throwing a chair at Ronin. Did I getcha? Bonk. Not quite. Next, he flipped the table and hid behind it, before tackling it in hopes to pin Ronin underneath. Ronin just jumped over it and bonked him again. On the third try, he threw a chair, thunderclap and flashed, then kicked the first chair at him again while bringing a sword down. This forced Ronin to draw his real sword for the first time to parry. Quote. Not bad. Ronin sheathed his first sword, now holding only his real sword in his left hand. Not many people knew this, but Ronin seemed to be left-handed. This meant he was actually starting to take him seriously. Kaminari laughed as they clashed, repeatedly kicking the chair to force Ronin to dodge or block two incoming attacks, but he couldn't force Ronin to use both swords at the same time. That was their first match over 2 minutes long. In the end, Ronin kicked the chair back at him and he choked. Bonk. Ronin went back to meditating while Kaminari thought, and figured out his next plan. Begin. Ronin opened his eyes to get splashed with water. Gotcha. Kaminari adopted a fighting pose, smiling widely. Ronin rolled his eyes and went to advance and nearly slipped on the now wet tile. Haha, you're going down this time. Ronin agreed, a little more literally. He slipped along like he was ice skating, performing a sideways slash and nearly getting hit by another chair. Kaminari jumped out of the way and onto a table, slashing his sword around like some kind of pirate. Endguard. Ronin grabbed the table with one hand, lifting one end higher and higher. Oh she. He tilted it up until Kaminari rolled off, crashing on the floor but hurrying to his feet, raising his sword and countering Ronin's first swing, flailing around and falling on his ass again, finally getting hit. Hit. But I was close. Ronin knelt again, smiling beneath the mask. Kaminari was starting to spread those wings. Nezu sorted through the stuff, checking to see when their final duel of the class period would start. There was a journal, a whole bunch of sticks, bundles of cloth, and some spare sets of kendo armor. Naturally, he didn't touch the journal, he put gloves on first. Didn't want to mess it up on accident. Inside hero analysis for the future number 15 were meticulous notes over many a person, himself included. He got so into it he missed the final match of the period entirely. When he stopped reading his strangely accurate specs, he just got to see two people. One kneeling calmly, the other stretching again. This got his gears a-turning, and he flipped through to find Ronin's notes on Kaminari. He started reading them as the second period started. Ronin rose from the floor and rushed Kaminari again, who this time fought with a chair in one hand and a sword in the other. Ronin used his sword's superior length to harass Kaminari outside of his own effective range. Kaminari countered with his superior weapon count, using the chair legs to try and trip him up. They danced back and forth before Ronin started getting fancier, jumping up and then kicking off the chair, leaping to one side and hitting the wall, then springing off the wall and into Kaminari. Hit. Kaminari laughed as Ronin disengaged, resetting his sword. Kaminari didn't have the finesse to dual wield, not right now. He was looking for a different development in Kaminari's fighting style, and as the 37th round started, he began to see Kaminari using his training to its full potential. Kaminari led by using the electric legs, laughing as he charged. His leg would occasionally seem to teleport into a new position, pushing him forward erratically. His new charging slash had a lot more power, and then Kaminari released his electricity. Ronin disengaged before, avoiding the wide range, and ended that round by kicking a chair at Kaminari. Bonk tilde. Hit. Almost got you that time. Indeed. Ronin resumed his kneeling pose. It was time for the difficulty to rise. Kaminari prepared to start the round with an electric attack. Begin. Kaminari tried to tackle Ronin but instead took a stick to the face, throwing him backward and off track. Hit. He regained his senses and adjusted his plan, opting to lead with a chair until he noticed this time Ronin didn't meditate. Instead, he pulled out a second stick, clipping it into the first. Then a third stick, and locked it into the second. He took a spear stance, whispering to himself. Dance with me, Tenbokiri. A quarterstaff. Feeling old man kung fu why, ho wait. Doesn't, Kiri mean, cutter. Ronin twisted the spear, and the staff buzzed as a long, golden white blade formed on the final third stick. It formed a circle like pommel, then a beam of concentrated electricity generated from that. Correct. You should survive this. Begin. Midnight ate chips beside Nezu, watching the screen. He didn't have that before, right? I don't think he had a second spear when he fought Stain, and shouldn't you be teaching a class? Nezu stole a chip, watching Kaminari run around screaming away from Ronin and his super cattle prod. Just finished, I'll go back next period at your own. She smacked his hand away and kept watching. Quote. You see, I could, but I'm the principal. Hey Aizawa, can you get me some tea and chips? Thanks. The spear could strike any objects thrown by Kaminari, forcing him to lose that part of his strategy. He now tried to dash in and squash the spear's range, but Ronin opted to jump up on a table so Kaminari couldn't get any good thunderclap and flashes in at him. Kaminari tried lifting the table but instead got his hand smacked and shocked. Hit wow, it's so weird to be on the receiving end of that. Ronin now rested by leaning on the spear, waiting for time to restart. Kaminari looked for a disadvantage, thinking back to Stain. Ronin had fought Stain with two swords, but Kaminari knew he couldn't pull it off for long. Stain and Ronin had fought for a while, meaning it took actual skill, and Kaminari didn't have the time to develop that. Instead, he knew something he was good at and something Ronin said earlier. Begin. Ronin swept the back of the spear into his hand with a slight kick from his foot, lowering the spearhead at Kaminari who was sprinting for the door, already halfway gone when Ronin started. Finally, he's starting to go somewhere. Why is he running? Is the spear that good? Midnight leaned forward, trying to cycle the camera to the right one to see them running just to see both move past. No, it's because the spear has a particular stance Ronin can't take while running. Aizawa drank more of his juice. Remember how he took a sideways stance with his hips sideways to his target before he realized what Kaminari was doing? That one. If he has to chase down his opponent, he can't hold that posture. A wise deduction. Nezu applauded and refocused. But Kaminari wouldn't think of that. So what benefit does it give Kaminari? The three doubled their efforts as Ronin rounded a corner. Ronin rounded a corner and nearly went straight into Kaminari, who was ready and tried to use 1.3 million volts to hit Ronin. Instead, Ronin pole vaulted forward and into a wall, then stuck it as he thrust his spear into the electric bubble and hit Kaminari again. Hit. Kaminari stopped using the large electric shock and shook his head, then looked around and ran toward the nearest bubbler. He finished drinking right as Ronin spoke again. Begin. Kaminari turned and started running away as fast as he could, using the occasional godspeed to get further away. Ronin now advanced more slowly, going at a light jog. Kaminari would randomly turn around, engaging in a few blows before running away again. Sometimes 2, sometimes 4, but never a lot. This lasted a full 6 minutes, until, time. Ronin stopped and began to stretch while Kaminari fell over, breathing heavily. If he could get the pace down, he could turn this into a running competition. He might not be as good in a straight dash, but he was carrying less. He didn't get all that math, but Ronin had that cool jacket, his swords, his guns, and his spear. All Kaminari had to drag around was a sword. Kaminari finished catching his breath, looking ahead. If he really wanted to beat his teacher, he'd need to start using the thunderclap and flash in a new way that he never had. He practiced with it like this before, sure, but he never used it just for this purpose. Begin. Ronin kicked his spear into position while Kaminari hunched, concentrating. Thunder breathing, first form. He breathed in, kept his back straight, leaned forward at the hip, then began to breathe out, launching himself forward and away, using the move only for its movement ability. Thunderclap and flash. He disappeared down the hall, rocketing as he used this sword technique not to fight, but to run. He'd only used it to close distance so far in the fight, but now. He took turns so fast he rammed into walls at first. Then he remembered what Ronin did. Instead of just hitting the wall and losing speed, turned it into more speed. Kaminari kicked off the next wall like Ronin had when he avoided Kaminari's indiscriminate shock 1.3 million volts, then flipped off the wall. It was just like running on the wall. Glancing back, Ronin had put away the spear and was chasing him again. He now had no weapons out, but from the way he ran like an animal, calling him disarmed was one way to get a first-hand demonstration of that snap kick Ronin usually practiced. It seemed he was right, that spear really was unwieldy. Is Ronin's unarmed combat good? That wasn't in the records. Vlad King pointed with a hand still holding popcorn. Quote. Maybe. He uses a lot of kicks, but I don't think I remember anything about his hands. Aizawa scratched his head, looking at the other first-year teacher. Wonder what else he's good with all that endurance. Shut up, Midnight. What? Honest question. Nezu flipped through back to the pages on Kaminari. Notes on how long it took him to activate his quirk, and ticks that showed when he used his super move so he could avoid it. The limits on the boy's reaction speed, how fast he was, many a note over his skills, but what was more interesting was the teaching notes. Kaminari responds very well to repetition, in any form. Repeated phrases, motions, or even just sounds help him remember things. He seems partially aware of this but isn't aware of the full ramifications of this. Kaminari had started fast, but as they ran, his feet movement got better and better, mimicking the man he was running from. He has an innate ability to repeat tasks over and over while observing someone doing the same task. When learning something while watching someone else do it correctly, his learning speed is at least tripled. Now the two danced down the hallways, chasing and pouncing like it was a high-speed race. It seemed faster than humanly possible, but Kaminari's quirk didn't help go faster. Did it? Ronin pushed off a wall, soaring through the air as he pulled out his guns. Kindness, Cupid, you're up. Kaminari looked over his shoulder and had both eyes widen, then dove into a hallway as the blast slammed into the tile, creating dust clouds where they hit. Ronin used the guns to push himself forward like he was Soldier from TF2, bounding down the hall and going sideways while pointing both guns at Kaminari. The air guns only had significant enough recoil to send him flying when the bullets detonated on impact. In the air like this, they barely moved his aim off course. Kaminari got blasted into the wall and groaned. Hit. I was doing so well to wait, you have too. It wasn't like he was hiding the second one. He hadn't worn a jacket for a while, so most people should have known that. Wait, he has two. Midnight slammed her hands on the table. Where is he getting them? How much is he paying for them? And can I get one? I thought he always had two, Vlad muttered. No, he only used one in the pop quiz, Aizawa shouted from the couch he dragged in, which he lay on while inside his sleeping bag. He took a pop quiz. Toshinori questioned, squinting. Or he was part of a pop quiz. And where are they? All these halls look too similar. He was in a pop quiz. Recovery girl shook her head at the mess. And more importantly, don't all of you have things to do? Nezu looked around at all the people crowded around his computer. He could be a good principal, but he was letting Ronin use his facility, Sue. Nope. The guns forced Kaminari to not just run faster, but to dodge as he moved. This was the second development he wanted, Kaminari not just running, but moving to gain a better position. Kaminari attacked from the ceiling, from around corners, from behind trash cans, anything to get a hit. He learned to take a zigzag approach, moving around and circling around him. Now that he stopped running away, he'd be focused on winning and not escaping. Ronin used his guns to force Kaminari to not linger in places longer than he needed to. They had to break less and less as Kaminari slowly adjusted to the speed, having just finished their first 10 minutes without a single hit. They sat back, staring at each other as students moved around. Some stopped to try and talk to them, and while Kaminari would give brief answers, Ronin just maintained his steady crushing stare. Even Mirio, the apparent disciple of All Might, couldn't get him to lose focus. Eventually, the students left, and they heard the bell ring. Ronin grabbed his guns and moved forward, pressing on the attack. Kaminari kicked off the wall like a swimmer and almost crossed the entire hallway in a second, instead running into the blasts. He might have hit, but Ronin had pointed both guns at the floor and pulled the trigger, sending both of them backward. Ronin just went backward though, while Kaminari was pushed up higher into the air, a sitting duck for the guns. Instead of taking it, though, he flipped his legs up and kicked off the ceiling like he was jumping off the floor, spinning as he landed and running away to try and find a more favorable ground. Ronin jogged after him, not concerned with the pace. Rushing would just tire himself out, and it was fine if he was slower. He just needed to stay the same to win. It was Kaminari who needed to adjust his style to win. Ronin didn't even need to pull out any fancy tricks, or even try. Kaminari had to stop to breathe, and it wasn't even a downtime. Ronin's steps rang out, walking down the halls like a classic gunslinger. He even could do the gun spinning trick. How did a swordsman beat a gunman? Simple, they didn't. Even he knew history well enough to say that. Ronin's quirk was mind reading or something, so no matter what he'd do, if Ronin could see him, he'd react in time. He could be surprised, but not if he saw you. Kaminari walked along the halls, then looked back around. He was back at the training room. He gave a small laugh. They had gone through all 4 towers, and wound up back here. He rested against the window, rubbing his head and avoiding the scared face in the reflection. He was terrified, not of getting hurt though. Ronin's weapon handling meant even when he got thrown into walls, it didn't hurt. No, he was terrified of fucking it all up. Ronin clearly had high expectations of him, and it was the first time anyone did. Even his friends didn't think he was hot shit, but Ronin had so much confidence in him. How would he react if Kaminari couldn't even hit him once, if Kaminari couldn't make use of any of the things he got taught? Don't believe in the Kaminari that believes in me. What did that mean? Don't believe in the Ronin that believes in you. What did that mean? What did any of it mean? He mulled it over in his thoughts, then the first and final lines came back to him. ... Believe in yourself. Believe in the Kaminari that believes in you. Quote ... I think I can do that. He pushed his worries down, flashing a smile at the reflection. Looked pretty cool, if he said so himself. And he just did. Yeah, I got this. Kaminari kicked off the wall. Fuck running, he was a hero. Ronin didn't spend the week teaching him to run, but to charge. Ronin heard the steps approaching. He raised his guns. It was weird, coming from so far away. He pointed his guns down the hall. Tap 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 tap. He checked the batteries on his guns, then pointed them again. Just how far away had Kaminari moved? It was getting louder though. Tap 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 tap. He adjusted his stance, shaking his arms to get the tension out, then. Pat 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 pat. Kaminari rounded the final corner, running along the wall for a few seconds before charging straight at him. Beneath his mask, Midoriya smiled. Good, good, pat 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 pat. His legs sparked with almost every step, forcing each one to be faster and faster. He pushed off walls, the floor, windows, anything as he darted forward. Bam 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 bam. The steps grew louder and louder, syncopated with the gunshots that tore up the silence. Bam 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 bam. Finally, he approached, speaking aloud. Thunder breathing first form. Thunderclappin'. Ronin placed both guns side by side. Duties call style, second form. Bullet rain. Forward. Flash. The guns blasted forward, pouring forward. Instead of aimed at a specific target, they were aimed in an area to force the target to dodge. Kaminari, however, just needed to avoid the area. He slammed both legs together and bent at the waist and knees, creating arcs of electricity as he jumped over them, pushing 12 feet up and into the ceiling in one jump. He spun slightly, putting his legs against the ceiling. Kaminari was just working on instincts now, abandoning his mind to just see what his body could do. He slammed into the ground, cracking the floor on impact. He looked up at the gun pressed against his head right as a timer rang. They both stared down at each other, then took a step back. Ronin checked his guns, giving each a fresh clip. Kaminari stretched his legs, which were sore after that final jump. He had been munching on energy bars between breaks, and these were his last 2. He downed them without another thought. He'd need the energy. He had almost done it. He had almost done it. If he could just do one more, he would have nailed him. Kaminari sighed, looking outside. It was raining. Perfect. He watched the lightning bolt strike out a real lightning bolt, not the shoddy thing he was. His mom could do that, but he never got the range thing down. It seemed impossible for him. He shook his head, then watched a second lightning bolt. He stretched his back a little, then leaned forward. A third lightning bolt illuminated the hall and lit up his face. He looked down at his legs, rubbing them, then checked his sheath. Quote. I can do this. Beggy, Kaminari bolted past him, dashing to the other side of the room. Ronin stepped away to avoid a hit, drawing his sword instead of the guns. But as Kaminari hit the wall, he put his legs underneath himself and kicked off that wall. Then the next wall, and the next wall too. Quote. What kind? He moved faster and faster, his entire body creating arcs of electricity that danced across his body, striking and scorching everything near him as he hit his limits and kept going, skin and muscles beginning to burn and snap under the force and energy. A storm only has one bolt. His entire body began to blur. His brain could barely focus, but it didn't need to. How many times had he done this move? Dashing across the street, dashing across his bedroom, dashing across the training hall. Thunder breathing, his body no longer touched on the floor, flying from wall to wall to gain more and more speed. The rafters, the walls, the windows, even the ceiling was fair game as Kaminari strived to go just a little faster. Formless technique. His pants were hot. His shoes melted. He couldn't see where he was going. He couldn't think of what to do next. So, naturally, he stopped thinking. Thunderstorm. He dashed past Ronin but kept on moving. The gust forced Ronin to take a step back then again as the boy kept dashing, going faster and faster, and Ronin dodged the first hit and the second. Ronin parried the third and fourth. Ronin blocked the fifth and sixth, and even the seventh. But when just one slipped by, coming from behind faster than he could turn. Ronin was launched into the air by Kaminari's eighth strike, but Kaminari wasn't done. He sailed through the air for a moment before Kaminari jumped past again, striking him back and suspending him midair as the attacks became faster and faster, a torrent of blows from every direction slamming into Ronin. Crash! Kaminari screamed as he leapt from the ceiling, diving straight down while gripping the sword with both hands. His eyes were white, unfocused. His hair was a mess. His pants were on fire. But his appearance was irrelevant as the final hit came down, slamming his opponent down with enough force to break the floor. Kaminari breathed out the last of his air, lying on top of Ronin. The tile, the pipes, the stone all cracked. His arms were shattered from the impact, and his legs felt like lead. But with eyes barely focused, blood running down his nose, hair sticking in every direction, he raised his head. Quote. Did I? Ronin, the one who actually got hit with a super move and was the one who was supposed to be injured, lying half a foot in the ground, looked up at the barely conscious boy. Quote. Hit. Chapter end notes. You read that shit, I've been writing for 12 hours, let's finish this arc in style. Yo yiggity child eating yo, what's good, I'm a human mob and this is a train wreck. Let's do this. I don't have a single note right now about the actual thing that's happening here other than a minor explanation of the teachers who showed up. One was the principal who doesn't have classes, Vlad and Aizawa don't have classes that week, All Might's afternoon classes are supposed to be first years, and Midnight is skipping class. That out of the way. This is no longer anything to do with this chapter. If you just want to see my thoughts, ask in the comments for details, I'm barely here anymore. Please, if you're writing a fanfic, don't remove content. This doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'll explain. If you have a character who goes through an arc, please don't scrap that arc and replace it with nothing. A fanfic I've read takes a character who was supposed to have an arc, looks at the arc and the self-betterment it would have created, and trash the whole thing. Then, to make it worse in my opinion, they gave it to a character who was supposed to have an arc, but they scrapped that arc too. Replace character development, don't remove it. You can even shuffle it around, but that second character even got a third person's arc. Which was previously scrapped. When making arcs, it needs to be relevant to the character. To give someone else as an example, Ron Weasley learns to be more confident in himself when he thinks he's been given a supernatural aid to help him perform better. He performs super well because he assumes it's the supernatural stuff. He later learns it was just him, and as a reward for the arc he gains self-confidence. The arc is relevant to his character because he didn't have confidence. Yes, I am bashing and ranting about a specific fanfic that I ranted about last paragraph that switched character arcs without thinking about how they applied to the characters. Same thing goes for challenges, and I'm still ranting about one fanfic. If you are going to have challenges, make them relevant to the characters. In a physical competition to see who's the physically best, don't give people fucking robot suits, this is a real fanfic and have only some of the people get to use them. In a fighting competition, it turns the fighting competition that shows how well you understand your own body and limits into a test to see what the fuck this robot does and how well you read the owner's manual when you got it literally a day ago. These people are fighting with mech suits they got one day ago and winning. Why the fuck are they allowed? These robots make the fighting tournament. Completely irrelevant. That's it. I'm tired. Happy New Year. Edit from the future. I'm not sure when this happened but the music in this fight got blocked. It was my favorite rendition of the Zenitsu's theme, but it's no longer available in my country through any rational means. You can still find it if you've got a VPN, but I'm a shill so I just downloaded it by skipping through YouTube downloaders until I found one that worked. It has been replaced, but the original link is going here so if it's ever back I can put it back. Chapter 64. Chapter Summary. The internship has ended. The students have gone home. All is quiet. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Kaminari lay in the sickbed, unconscious. Ronin stood to one side, adamantly refusing medical care. I thank you, miss, but I will survive. He kept his hands in his pockets so that there wasn't any skin for recovery girl to kiss. You just don't want to get tired, stop being a baby. Nezu pushed, but Ronin could not be baited. And let you remove my mask? I think not. Since he already took off his mask, it was reasonable that he had makeup or something on to hide his identity. He didn't even react when recovery girl pushed where his ribs were supposed to be. Your lower ribs were shattered. You might die if you don't get medical care. She bonked him over the head, but if touching his ribs didn't make him flinch, what would a cane upside the head do? Stop being so stubborn. Promise me that you won't remove the mask. I promise, now hurry up and get kissed. Ronin held out a hand and was kissed, but instead of falling over, he stayed meditating. His concentration and pain tolerance was incredible. Recovery girl should have left him exhausted with the energy it'd take to reform his ribs, but he stayed standing well, stayed sitting upright. How many teachers would be willing to shatter their own ribs just to let their students improve? They might die to protect them, but Ronin's willingness to fight was incredible, especially when shown by his weapons. Ronin had left a bag inside the training room, and inside, he left his weapons, his swords. Sure enough, after Nezu got everyone to leave the room, he turned on the sword and got to making portals. It seemed Ronin had never shown them his quirk. Or his quirklessness. Ronin could guess that they would mess with his things. They did have to check for threats to the students, but it seemed Ronin was only a threat to himself. He sat now, cross-legged, breathing slowly. Nezu looked out in the hall at the accumulating heroes. Power loader fumed. Why'd he have to break the ground right outside the training hall? Just one room over and we wouldn't have to worry about it at all. Now we've got to fix the tile and the piping. I've got to fix the tile and piping. Smintos corrected, indifferently. Why do we have Musudafu's number 2 most wanted man in our sickbay? Not to worry everyone, since you're all so excited about our student and not the guest. Kaminari, our student, the one with the broken arms, will be fine. Nezu hopped up on Midnight's shoulder to speak to everyone. Our guest is not the one who broke the floor. Although technically he was the object that broke the floor, Kaminari is the one who generated the force to break the floor. Now, I need someone to help me move Ronin to my office. Nezu looked over a sea of curious faces. Whoever helped him move Ronin would probably get to learn a little more about what he was doing here, as the internship thing had mostly stayed quiet and under wraps. Any volunteers? You can ask me, I'm already here. Midnight chided him. He was on top of her, so he might have guessed. Quote. You think you can lift Ronin? Vlad wasn't interested in Ronin, but seeing Midnight try and carry him could be pretty funny. She might even drop him a couple of times. Which way to your office from here? Nezu pointed. Down the hall, take a left then a right. Right-hand side, thanks. Ronin limped away from the debate about who was going to carry him, the debate itself going quite a while before anyone realized he was long gone. Motherfucking bitch tits ass fucking bullshit goddammit. Midoriya used every swear word he could think of. How did he break his ribs so much? The calm he usually showed was gone as he sat in the office. It was mostly fixed, but his side still ached. He forced himself to meditate in the office, alone. If nothing else, Nezu made sure he didn't have to put up with the other heroes at least. He had to give it to him, the little guy knew how to be hospitable when he wanted to. He might have just sat there for minutes or hours before someone else came in. The door closed quietly, and the smaller figure sat opposite him. Quote. Hello Ronin. Quote. Nezu. Ronin was extremely formal, instead of the screaming Midoriya who was dying on the inside and trying not to cough up a lung. Quote. We've got some paperwork for you. He slid the papers across but kept an extra paper in his hands. Ronin used his own All Might pen, from All Might's 20th anniversary. Even when he tried to hide it, Midoriya's fanboy tendencies peeked through. Not that most people would recognize it. Nezu only did because he never forgot anything. Is that all? Ronin placed the papers back together after a quick review and signing, not that the signature meant anything. He seemed to practice writing the name for this moment. Nezu glanced between Ronin and the paper, then slowly slid it across. Quote. This is a job application. I would like to have you work at UA. Nezu smiled pleasantly, pouring tea for himself from a thermostat. Did you think I was lying earlier? Quote. Yes, but UA and I have very different goals. We wouldn't get along. Ronin slid back that paper. Nezu looked at him, then gestured for him to keep going. UA wants to create celebrities. I want to create heroes. I can't compromise, and your society won't compromise for a single vigilante. Ronin never seemed to hold back when it came to insults or, well, the truth. My skills and techniques wouldn't be helpful to most heroes anyway. Stop focusing on a fad, and either clean up your shit or keep counting your money. But your mindset itself is quite good for teaching. Nezu adjusted himself in his chair, and I'd like you to help us start reforming. Your abilities might be better than you think they are. If you signed up, you would work at UA's hero agency and be allowed to run free. I'd sort out the legal business, and you wouldn't have to make public appearances. All you'd need is a quirk usage license, and you'd be good to go. You don't have to agree right now. Nezu had to use a meter stick to push the page back since he wasn't close enough to get it otherwise. I just want you to think about it. I'll try to turn UA into something you'd be proud of, but I think you know best that the only person you can trust is yourself. Nonsense. If you can't trust heroes, who can you trust? Ronin rose, picking up the paper and reading it over. Quote. Oh, why didn't you say so? I'm glad to know you have the same trust in me as I do in. I said I trust heroes. Who said I trusted you? Aren't you the one in charge of UA when it became a shit show? His hatred pierced his own helmet, gouging straight through Nezu and